Chapter 282. Su Ming looked at Bai Su, and Bai Su also looked at him. The two of them stood on the platform outside the cave abode and looked at each other in the morning. The instant she saw the dazed look in Su Ming's eyes and the brief moment of confusion, Bai Su no longer felt pleased with herself. Instead, an indescribable feeling rose within her. She knew that her dream, perhaps, was real. The thin boy in her dream gradually overlapped with the Su Ming before her. Su Ming looked at Bai Su and walked towards her until he stood before her. He stared at that familiar face, and after a long while, he stretched out his hand and grabbed Bai Su's right hand, then lowered his head to look at her. This was the first time he touched Bai Su's skin. She shuddered and instinctively struggled a few times, but she could not break free from Su Ming's grasp. Most of the time, Su Ming paid attention to Bai Su's and Bai Ling's identical faces. He had never observed any other parts of Bai Su's body. Only at this moment did he look at Bai Su's right index finger. It might still be as white as jade, but that finger was bent and could not be straightened. Bai Su broke free from his grasp and took a few steps back, then looked at Su Ming with a complicated expression. You saw it? Su Ming nodded. Why did this happen? Bai Su remained silent for a moment. When she lifted her head, her gaze was still as complicated as ever. This was her secret. She did not want anyone to know about it. This was the weakest part of her heart, and she did not even tell Ma Xian about it. You shouldn't have interrupted my training. Su Ming shook his head and walked past Bai Su to sit down on the big stone outside the cave abode. He brought out his drawing board and started drawing on it once again. Bai Su stood there for a long time. For the first time, she turned around quietly. She did not make a ruckus, nor was she pleased with herself, nor was she angry. Instead, with a complicated expression, she left the ninth summit. When she left, Su Ming lifted his head and looked in the direction Bai Su had left, then let out a soft sigh. This is your life. This is my creation. This is the path you chose. I didn't force you. When you no longer know who you are, that will be the moment Ma Xian fails. Time passed by without anyone knowing it. In the blink of an eye, 3 months went by. There was less than half a year left until the day of Sky Mishamanhat. During this half a year, many of the people in Freezing Sky Clan began their final isolation and began their final preparations. Sometimes, quite a number of Freezing Sky Clan disciples would form groups to look at the affiliated tribes at the edge of the great tribe of Freezing Sky, which were located not too far away from the place. There were quite a number of squares there. You could buy all the items you needed there. In fact, there were even quite a number of items unique to the other places in the land of South Morning that were brought there to be traded. During the Sky Mist battle that was held once every 10 years, there would also be a large number of such squares appearing. Besides being formed by the great tribe of Freezing Sky itself, they also attracted quite a number of outsiders. Besides, this was the great battle of Sky Mist that only happened once a century. That was why during this period of time, there would be 2 incredibly lively places in the entire land of South Morning. One of them was the square outside Western Sea Clan, and the other was a place like this outside Freezing Sky Clan. Almost every single day, there would be Freezing Sky Clan disciples going out to trade for the items they needed. Similarly, as the number of people in the square increased, they would occasionally hold some auctions. The items brought out from the auctions would usually pique the interest of the crowd. During these 3 months, besides copying the Golden Rocks charge, Su Ming also used the method of carrying weights to refine his body at fixed times. There were already 8 ice hoops on his legs. These 8 ice hoops were hidden under Su Ming's robes. Besides Che, no one else knew about them. Every single time Che saw Su Ming walking like the wind, he would be shocked. He knew clearly just how heavy the 8 ice hoops were. They were like mountains, and under that weight, Su Ming would have to pay several times the price before he could even take a single step forward. It could be said that Che had witnessed everything that happened after Su Ming put on the ice hoops. From the initial ease of his movements to the time when there were 3 ice hoops on each of his legs, Su Ming could no longer take a single step forward. His body trembled, and he only got used to it after standing for an entire day. When he could walk with ease after 3 ice hoops were added to the 4, he went through another round of getting used to it. Gradually, The 4 ice hoops on each of his legs no longer seemed to have any weight on Su Ming's body. It did not matter whether he was walking or flying. He was no different from a normal person. However, only Zicheng knew just how much effort Su Ming had put in to reach this state. During these 3 months, he practically did not sleep at all. Besides copying the Su clan's movements and the divine general armor that would occasionally surround his body with black mist, he spent most of his time getting used to the weight. During these 3 months, Su Ming's divine general armor would frequently appear. Sometimes, the black mist would gather around his body, and at other times, it would scatter and surround him. Every single time the black mist from the armor appeared, Su Ming would pay full attention to it and use fine control along with his divine sense to form a series of combinations on the armor. These combinations were based on the dozens of rune pictures Hu Zi had given him 2 months ago. This was Su Ming's rather absurd idea. He could not increase his own methods of defense, so he could only create his own. The best way was to control the black mist that appeared when he transcended and have it form the runes within the armor while it was turning into the armor. However, this was easier said than done. It was difficult for Su Ming, who did not have a single shred of understanding towards runes, to form them with the black mist without making any mistakes. Besides, Hu Zi mostly relied on his innate ability in this aspect. He could not explain it too clearly to Su Ming, so Su Ming had to understand everything on his own. Fortunately, his picture creation could copy the world. After spending a large amount of time, he managed to make the black mist form into a rune once among the dozens of times he tried. However, this rune was not only of the lowest level, it could also only change a few times. Once it changed a few times, Su Ming would no longer be able to control it. He would need to use fine control and an even greater divine sense before he could do it. However, Su Ming did not give up. Even if he could not be considered to have succeeded perfectly once out of the dozens of times he tried, he could still clearly feel that the armor's defensive capabilities had increased by quite a large margin. This was a direction. When the day came when Su Ming could control it perfectly, then even if the divine general armor did not have any physical form and was just an illusion, its defense would still be incredibly strong. Su Ming continued training and making preparations during these 3 months. Besides these things, Bai Su also came to him every single day without a break during these 3 months. During the first few days, she still had a complicated look on her face, but after half a month, Bai Su seemed to have understood something and returned to her rude and unreasonable personality. She maintained her previous attire, causing the noise outside Su Ming's cave abode to appear every single day. Su Ming, what have you been drawing these past few days? You've been drawing for a few months now, but there's nothing. Su Ming, do you think this looks like a mountain? I drew a mountain. Su Ming, can you lift your head and say something? Has anyone ever told you that you're like a mute? Snow was falling from the sky on the 9th summit. Bai Su sat beside Su Ming and glared at him angrily. She held a piece of charcoal in her hand and an item that looked exactly like Su Ming's drawing board before her. She scribbled on it a few times. Su Ming did not speak. He sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. Black mist surrounded his body. That black mist would occasionally form strange shapes, but very soon it would dissipate as it could no longer maintain its form. When she saw that Su Ming was still behaving the same way, Bai Su grabbed the drawing board before her and threw it at him angrily. Yet the moment the drawing board closed in on Su Ming, it floated in midair. Bai Su stood up and threw the charcoal in her hand at him as well. Yet that charcoal continued floating around Su Ming's body. Bai Su seemed to be used to this sort of thing. She was not surprised at all and walked towards Su Ming quickly. She lifted her foot and was about to kick him, but the moment she lifted her foot, she put it down and glared at Su Ming, who had his eyes closed angrily. She had kicked him like this before, but the consequences were severe. Yet when she saw Su Ming closing his eyes and ignoring her actions, Bai Su could no longer control her temper. She gritted her teeth and kicked him. "I'll kick you, you mute. I'll kick you." She kicked him, but before her foot even touched Su Ming, she immediately let out a cry of surprise. She felt as if her body was grabbed by an invisible hand, and her head fell downwards to float beside Su Ming together with the drawing board and charcoal. "Su Ming, you're a bastard," Bai Su shouted loudly. Her eyes were once again filled with anger. She tried to turn her body around, but she still ended up floating in midair with her head still downwards. As she continued shouting, Bai Su could not help but feel tired. The dizziness that came with it after a long period of time also caused a red flush to appear on her cheeks. She decided not to speak anymore, but the anger in her eyes did not diminish. She continued thinking of ways to deal with Su Ming in her head. At that moment, a long arc closed in and turned into Ziche on the platform. He took a few brisk steps forward and arrived beside Su Ming. He swept his gaze across the area and saw Bai Su floating upside down on the platform. "What are you looking at? What's there to look at? Haven't you seen it before?" When Bai Su saw Ziche looking at her, she shouted again. Ziche completely ignored Bai Su's words. During the past 3 months, he had already gotten used to Bai Su causing trouble and being taught a lesson by Su Ming. "Master, the ice stone is gone. I've searched many places, but I couldn't find it. But the square at the edge of Freezing Sky Tribe has been very lively lately. The people from the clan often go there. There must be ice stones there. Master, please allow me to temporarily leave the 9th summit and go to the market on your behalf." "Square?" Su Ming opened his eyes. The black mist around him seeped into his body and disappeared. "That's right. The closer we get to Sky Mist Battle, the more squares like this will appear at the borders between Freezing Sky Tribe and Freezing Sky Clan. Don't worry, Master. I'll be back in half a month," Ziche quickly said. "Be careful." Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence. He had gained some understanding of controlling the black mist in his divine general armor recently, and did not want to interrupt his training. That was why he nodded and lifted his right hand to tap Ziche's body, temporarily releasing the restraints on him. "The third night watch is over. We'll continue tomorrow. Please give me a monthly ticket." And to all the fellow Taoists who read on Baidu's forum, "If I can't give you a monthly ticket, then can I give you recommendation tickets that cost nothing?" To be continued. If you like this work, then please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 283. Ziche shuddered slightly. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he reopened them, there was a brilliant glint in his eyes. The freedom he had not felt for a long time made him take a deep breath. When he looked at Su Ming, he saw Su Ming looking at him calmly. Under that gaze, Ziche quickly composed himself and wrapped his fist in his palm before bowing toward Su Ming. "Master, just call me Uncle Master. I've released you for 10 days. You must return within 10 days. Su Ming interrupted Ziche's words. At some unknown point in time, Ziche had started addressing Su Ming as his master. When he heard Su Ming's words, Ziche fell silent for a moment before he voiced his obedience. "Uncle Master, I don't need 10 days. 3 to 5 days will do. I'll take my leave now." Ziche took a few steps back and turned into a long arc that charged into the sky. He circled once in the sky before charging towards the horizon. Once Ziche left, Su Ming's gaze fell on Bai Su, who was hanging upside down by the side. He lifted his right hand and swung it. Bai Su's body immediately turned around and landed on the ground. At the same time, the drawing board and charcoal also flew towards Bai Su and floated beside her. "Su Ming, Bai Su might have been hanging upside down for a long time, but she was still very angry. She looked like an angry lion cub. She might not have bared her teeth and claws, but judging by her expression, it was about the same. If you continue making noise, I'll chase you down a mountain today. I'll never tell you what I drew." A hint of a smile appeared on Su Ming's lips. His words were not loud, but made Bai Su glare at him angrily for a long time before she turned her head around and let out a harumph. During these 3 months, Su Ming had found Bai Su's weakness. The girl's curiosity was far greater than that of a normal person's. She wanted to know what Su Ming had been drawing during the past few months, and with that in mind, Su Ming had the upper hand when he came into contact with Bai Su. When he saw that Bai Su was no longer bothering him, Su Ming did not continue trying to change the divine general armor. Instead, He brought out his drawing board and focused on copying the goldenrod strokes. Time passed by, and soon the sun set in the west. The last rays of the sun shone on the sky, creating a beautiful sight. Su could no longer hold back her curiosity. She frowned and walked to Su Ming's side, watching him drawing on the blank drawing board. But after looking for a long time, she still couldn't see anything, just like before. Humph, pretending to be mysterious. Su mumbled in her heart and cast a glance at Su Ming. His face was incredibly focused, and for some unknown reason, Su found him to be even more despicable. However, it was just hateful. There was no longer the contempt and disdain in her eyes from a few months ago. Su didn't even notice this subtle change. When dusk passed and the sky gradually darkened, Su rolled his eyes and let out a few dry coughs. I know what you're drawing. So this is what you drew. Not bad. Your drawing is all right, but there's something wrong with this part. As Su spoke, she quickly pointed at a corner of Su Ming's drawing board with her right hand. It's a pity that there's a flaw here, and the overall feeling of the painting is gone. But if you change the brush strokes here, it'll be better. And here, the painting here isn't that good either. Su looked as if she had already seen through what Su Ming was drawing and continued giving pointers for a long time with the air of an elder. Yet Su Ming remained like a block of wood, as if he did not hear her. He continued drawing. She might have gotten used to Su Ming turning a blind eye to her, but Su still became angry once again. She had a feeling that she had practically brought out all the anger in her life during the past 3 months. This was something that was rarely seen in her life. You're so full of yourself, arrogant and conceited, pretending to be mysterious, pretending to be deaf and dumb. Bastard, bastard, bastard. Su stomped her feet and turned around. Just as she was about to leave, she turned around and looked at Su Ming, who was still focused on drawing with a calm expression on his face. Su glared at him angrily for a long time before she picked up her drawing board and sat down. She used charcoal to paint on the board for a while, and only then did the anger on her face turn into a smile, but she would still occasionally glare at Su Ming. Eventually, when the sky turned completely dark, Su placed her drawing board before Su Ming and let out another harumph before she turned around and went down the mountain. Before she left, a smug look appeared on her face once again. On her way back to the 7th summit, her lips curled up into a happy smile as she looked forward to the next day. Let him bully me again. I'll go ask him tomorrow whether he saw my drawing and what he thought of it. Su placed her hands behind her back and walked happily on the summit. Her hair, which was tied up by the red grass rope, danced in the air. The 2 braids by her ears also swayed as she walked, making her look incredibly adorable. The smile on her lips and the smug look on her face caused Su to possess a completely different beauty compared to a few months ago. Ah, is this little sister Su? Come, let me see what made you so happy. A coquettish laugh came from behind the stairs. Su walked up to the 7th summit. Along with it came a girl who was about the same age as Su. The girl was also very pretty. As she laughed, her face was filled with playfulness. Su quickly turned her head around. When she saw the girl, a faint blush appeared on her cheeks, but soon she glared at her. Chin-chan, you're younger than me by a few days. How dare you call yourself my big sister? I'm older than you, and I joined the sect earlier than you. I'm a senior sister. As Su spoke, she also laughed and started fooling around with Chin-chan. All right. You're the senior sister, all right? Ah, stop fooling around. I'm ticklish. That's what you get for speaking so strangely just now. Playful sounds mixed with bell-like laughter came from the stairs of the 7th summit. The 2 girls fooled around for a long time before they chased each other up the mountain. At the mountainside, Chin-chan patted her chest and calmed her breathing before she said to Su with a smile, Su, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I still have to go look for our eldest senior sister. All right, I'm going back to my cave abode as well. Su's cheeks were still flushed from fooling around just now. She smiled and nodded. Chin-chan was just about to leave when she hesitated and looked at Su. Su, I heard that you've been going to the 9th summit for the past few months. Su was momentarily stunned. She cast Chin-chan a glance, but did not speak. And I saw you go to the 9th summit with my own eyes once again. You went there to look for that detestable Su Ming. When Chin-chan mentioned Su Ming's name, disgust appeared on her face. Su, that Su Ming is really annoying. He's arrogant and thinks that he can swagger around just because he tied with senior brother Sima. What sort of person is he? I really hate people like that. Don't be fooled by his flowery words. I know this sort of person the best. When Chin-chan saw that Baisu did not speak, she continued speaking. Yet before she could finish, she was interrupted by Baisu. All right, he's not as disgusting as you say. Baisu had said those words instinctively, but once she finished speaking, she was also stunned. She could say things like arrogance, conceit, and swagger around, but when she heard others say those things about Su Ming, she felt a little uncomfortable. Su, you have to believe me. I know him better than you do. I once went to summon him on behalf of eldest senior sister, but I went a few times in a row. I've seen this person's face far too clearly. I'm guessing that he's just a sweet talker in front of you and talks a lot. But in truth, he's nothing compared to Big Brother Sima. Big Brother Sima is the one who truly treats you well. Chin-chan sighed softly and looked at Baisu. Baisu fell silent. The moment she heard Sima Xian's name, a dazed look appeared before her eyes. Sima Xian's figure seemed to appear faintly in her mind, but she could not see his face clearly. In fact, during the past few months, she had wanted to see Sima Xian practically every single day, but gradually, she only thought of him once every few days. Now, it had been more than a month since Sima Xian's name had appeared in her mind. Su, wake up. This Su Ming isn't a good person. He's too arrogant. He doesn't even respect eldest senior sister. He's only been in the school for a short period of time, and he's already like this. This kind of behavior won't last for long. When Sky Miss Shaman Hunt starts, with his personality and the way he acts, he'll definitely die. The moment Chin-chan said those words, she suddenly stopped speaking because Baisu had lifted her head to look at her, and there was an aloof look in her eyes. Let's not talk about the fact that I have my own reasons for going to the 9th summit. This arrogant, conceited, and insufferably arrogant person you said will definitely die didn't say a single sweet talker to me. When we're together, I'm the one talking most of the time, and he's always silent. In fact, most of the time, he's immersed in his own world, and it's difficult for others to enter it. On the contrary, Sima, Big Brother Sima, is completely different from him. The complicated feelings in Baisu's heart caused her to not finish her sentence. Instead, she turned around, and just as Chin-chan was about to say something, she left. Not long after Baisu left, Su Ming slowly put down his right hand and lifted his head to look at the sky. A frown gradually appeared between his brows. Something's still missing. I've been copying it for 3 months, but I still haven't gained much epiphany. It's as if there's a barrier that I can't break from the golden rock spreading its wings. What's missing? As Su Ming thought about it, his gaze naturally fell on the drawing board Baisu had placed down before she left. The spot she placed it was ingenious. It was a spot where Su Ming could see at the moment he lifted his head. As he looked at the drawing board, Su Ming smiled. Baisu's talent in drawing was terrible. Most of the time, people had to guess what she drew, but this time, her drawing was very simple. There was a girl with her hands on her hips on the drawing board. She lifted her leg, and with a smug look on her face, she kicked a pig that had its eyes closed and its head lowered on a cliff. By the looks of it, she wanted to kick the pig into the cliff. On the pig's head, Su Ming's name was written crookedly. Su Ming shook his head. He was about to avert his gaze when his eyes suddenly lit up. He stared at Baisu's drawing board, and the light in his eyes gradually grew brighter. It was as if bolts of lightning were flashing through his mind. Could it be that what's missing is recommending Gengxin's Song Shishing in the 6th year of Xuanhe? He arrived at Bianliang City in Tokyo. There were still 2 years left until the humiliation of Jinkong. Yuan stood by the river of 50 feet, at a loss as to what to do. Tokyo Dream Flower? Evil fantasy? Before the collapse of a building, he lived a life of drunkenness. Flowers bloomed in the marketplace. Yuan staggered forward in this world that was about to collapse. When he turned his head back, he found that history had changed without him even realizing it. A brand new era had quietly begun. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 284. Su Ming stood up. His gaze fell on by Su's drawing, and he gradually closed his eyes. After a moment, when he opened them again, he took a few steps forward and stood at the edge of the platform outside his cave abode. The sky had already darkened, but the snow underneath was shining with a white light, causing the ground to not look dark. The platform Su Ming was standing on was located near the top of the ninth summit. The distance between the platform and the ground below could be described as hundreds of thousands of feet. If a normal person lowered their head and looked down, their heart would start racing and they would feel dizzy. Su Ming stood there and looked down. His eyes sparkled. The golden rock roars between the sky and earth and flies above the nine heavens. This sort of sacred beast of the shaman tribe is definitely not something that can be created with a simple copy. If I don't have the rock's heart, if I can't sense the rock's will, then it'll be difficult for me to understand its spirit. Then what is the golden rock's heart and will? Su Ming stood there in silence for a long time before he closed his eyes once again. He lifted his right foot and took a step towards the edge of the platform, towards the hundreds of thousands of feet deep abyss. With that one step, his body floated into the air. Without activating a single hint of the power of transcendence or enchanted treasures, his body fell down the mountain like a giant rock. The speed of his fall was incredibly quick. It was as if the friction against the air had stirred up a whistling sound. Su Ming closed his eyes and spread his arms wide. As he continued falling, the scene of the golden rock commanding the sea of clouds appeared in his mind. The rock's heart and will are reflected in its flight between the sky and earth. In its eyes, there will never be anything blocking its path. It will fly endlessly in the vast sky. Su Ming's body fell faster and faster. The moaning sounds of the wind reached his ears. That sound seemed to be able to tear apart everything. And as it traveled into his ears, there seemed to be a strange sound within it. 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet. As Su Ming continued falling, his eyes remained closed. Besides the golden rock's figure, there was nothing else in his mind. 40,000 feet, 50,000 feet. When he fell 80,000 feet and was already incredibly close to the foot of the mountain, he descended like a shooting star. At that instant, all the blood in Su Ming's body surged to his head as if it was flowing in reverse, causing booming sounds to ring in his head. The booming sounds became even stronger, gradually causing Su Ming's consciousness to become clouded. Gradually, the golden rock looked as if it was an illusion, and at that instant, Su Ming opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the booming sounds in his head shook the sky and earth. The golden rock let out a roar towards the sky in Su Ming's head. The great rock's heart represents freedom. Its will is a kind of freedom, a kind of unrestrained pursuit. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to tame, because once a tamed rock lost its freedom, it was equivalent to losing its soul. It's clear that Master's golden rock's freedom was not restricted by him. It can run as it pleases in the land of the shamans, and only when Master needs it will it appear. There must be some other reason behind this, or else even if it's just this, it would still be very difficult. Understanding appeared in Su Ming's eyes. As he fell, he did not stop. Instead, he simply allowed his body to get closer to the layer of ice on the ground. However, he only lifted his right hand and drew 2 lines toward the sky. Those 2 lines contained all of Su Ming's strength, contained his understanding, and also contained his perception towards the golden rock's will. The instant he drew those 2 lines, Su Ming was already less than 1,000 feet away from the ground. A sense of danger enveloped Su Ming's body and mind, but he did not fight against it. The instant he was less than 200 feet away from the ground, he drew a perfect arc with his body practically stuck to the ground, only several dozens of feet above the ground. He charged into the sky. Su Ming was so quick that he felt as if he had crashed into a mountain. but there was clearly a vast expanse of empty sky before him. That feeling was incredibly strong. In fact, it could even be said that it was no longer a feeling, but a feeling brought about by the pain of his body crashing into the ground. As he felt as if he had crashed into a mountain, the distance between the ground and the sky seemed to have shrunk by several times in Su Ming's eyes. It was as if the sky and earth were 2 points, 2 lines, and once they fused together, their positions changed abruptly. This was what Su Ming sensed at that instant. His body instantly turned into a black dot and appeared in the sky. Excitement appeared in his eyes, but waves of intense pain traveled through his body. During that instant just now, he had appeared in the sky from the ground at an astonishing speed. His body could not withstand that sort of speed for long. Su Ming could sense that with his physical body's endurance, if he used that speed again, his flesh and blood would be torn from his body. Is this the Great Rock's speed? No, it's not as fast as the Great Rock. It's still a little lacking, but just this alone is already shocking. Su Ming quelled the excitement in his heart. He did not dare use that sort of speed again. He walked slowly towards the ninth summit's platform and immediately sat down cross-legged on it. He coughed out a mouthful of blood. However, Su Ming felt that it was worth it for him to cough up that blood. By coughing out a mouthful of blood as the price, he managed to understand the will of the golden rock spreading its wings. It was enough. My body's not strong enough. If I was strong enough, then I could last a little longer. With this sort of speed, even the small Virescent sword wouldn't be able to catch up to me. Su Ming's heart pounded against his chest. It could be said that he had come to understand the golden rock's speed purely by chance. If it was not because of what Bai Su drew on her drawing board, Su Ming would not have thought of this. He swept his gaze across Bai Su's drawing board and slowly closed his eyes. In his head, he kept replaying the speed he had just now and the 2 strokes he had drawn. When the night passed and the sky became bright, Su Ming opened his eyes. There was still excitement in his eyes. Once he lowered his head and looked at his body, a glint appeared in his eyes. At this moment, if I were to wear the battle god's armor, if the armor was equipped with an array formation to increase its defense, and if I were to remove all the ice stones, then how fast would I be if I used the speed of the golden rock? As Su Ming mumbled, he decided to give it a try. However, the chances of him forming a rune in the divine general armor was still not high. Just as he was about to give it a try, Su Ming's expression suddenly changed. He charged towards his cave abode and stepped inside. Without any hesitation, he walked towards the spot where He-Feng and the wings of the moon had fused together. There, He-Feng was opening his eyes slowly. His eyes were bloodshot. He lifted his head and roared towards the sky. Cracks rapidly appeared on his skin, but there was no blood within them. Instead, there were waves of black mist spreading out. The wings of the moon were on his body, and, as he flapped them, he looked as if he wanted to rush out of the cave abode. However, Su Ming walked towards him, lifted his right hand, and swung his finger downwards. At the same time, Han Mountain Bell manifested above He-Feng. Bell chimes reverberated in the air, turning into a wave of pressure and sound that shook He-Feng. At the same time, He-Feng froze for a moment, as if he had regained consciousness. A pained expression appeared on his face. "Master, I'm about to succeed. I can feel that if I can get through this and go through another fusion, I'll succeed." He-Feng's voice rose and fell. When it reached He-Feng's ears, Su Ming's finger had already touched the center of his brows. The instant Su Ming's finger fell, Su Ming's robes fluttered furiously. His hair was also lifted. A grave look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. A mighty pressure that was equivalent to those who had attained great completion in the awakening realm and could even fight against powerful berserkers who had just arrived at the initial stage of the bone sacrifice realm erupted forth from Su Ming's body and surged into He-Feng's body through his finger as he fused with the wings of the moon. He-Feng's body trembled. Gradually, he sat down slowly. "Master, when I was fusing with them, I saw their memories. As He-Feng spoke, his teeth suddenly grew in a bewitching manner. In an instant, he bared them, and his unfinished words turned into a roar. Fire. That was the only word in He Feng's roar. As he roared, flames abruptly spread out from his body, as if they wanted to burn and melt Su Ming's cave abode in the ninth summit. Yet the moment they appeared, the blood-red moon in Su Ming's right eye shone. He lifted his left hand and pressed it against the palm he had placed on He Feng's forehead. With a fierce push, the fire spreading out from He Feng's body froze and tumbled back into He Feng's body. Time passed by. This time, the process of Su Ming helping He Feng fuse with the wings far surpassed what he did in the past. Once the first day was over, he was still not done. Bai Su arrived at the ninth summit a long time ago. After waiting for a moment, she entered Su Ming's cave abode, but the moment she stepped in, she was immediately pushed away by a wave of power. After trying a few times, she sat down by the side in anger. Only when night arrived did she leave unwillingly. This process lasted for 7 days. When dusk fell on the 7th day and night fell, Su Ming opened his eyes. Before him, He Feng had once again turned into a gigantic ball of black light. It was quiet, but there was a powerful pressure spreading out from within the ball of light. A feeling of being connected by blood rose in Su Ming's heart when he looked at the ball of light. He looked slightly tired, and, after looking at it for a while longer, he walked out and sat down cross-legged to meditate and recover. It was also at that moment that an uninvited guest appeared outside Bai Su's cave abode on the 7th summit. That person was also a woman, and she lived on the 7th summit. However, her level of cultivation was not high, and she was usually quiet, which made it easy for others to overlook her. When the woman arrived, she gave Bai Su a bamboo slip. The words Sima were written in beautiful handwriting on the bamboo slip. Senior brother Sima wants to see you. Once the woman gave her the bamboo slip, she spoke coldly and turned around to leave. Bai Su held the bamboo slip and stared at it dumbly. Her mind was in a mess. This was the first time she felt this way when she heard that Sima Xian wanted to see her. There's one more chapter later. 3 days in a row, I fulfill my promise. I beg for few monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 285. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Bai Su quietly walked out of the house. Her hair was still tied up with a red straw rope, and there were 2 small braids by her ears. She wore a fur shirt, and there were even some sequins stuck to her forehead. She could not describe what she was feeling right now, but she could feel that it was different from before. In the past, every time she met Sima Xian, she would be filled with warmth. Even though she was only talking to Sima Xian and raising the flag, every time Sima Xian looked at her, her heart would beat wildly like a little deer. Yet now, that feeling did not disappear, but it had become much fainter. This made her feel complicated and, at the same time, confused. She left the 7th summit quietly and walked the familiar path to the 1st summit. However, she felt that the path she took today was very short. Bai Su was not very familiar with the 1st summit. Even though she had come here a few times, she only knew where Sima Xian's cave abode was. When she arrived outside Sima Xian's cave abode, she saw the extraordinarily handsome Sima Xian sitting by the stone table, dressed in a long robe. There was gentleness on Sima Xian's face, and his smile was very charming. His eyes shone like stars as he looked at Bai Su. Su, why haven't you come to see Big Brother Sima Xian for more than a month? Big Brother Sima Xian. Bai Su's footsteps came to a halt. She did not know what to say. The wild air around her disappeared at that moment, and in its place was an obedient, and still as complicated as before. Come, sit across from me. Sima Xian looked at Bai Su. Under the moonlight, his smile was even more enchanting. This was his unique charm. Bai Su quietly walked closer and sat across from Sima Xian with her head lowered. She looked completely different from when she was in the 9th summit. It was as if they were 2 people who were worlds apart. Bai Su's mind was a little chaotic. She did not know why, but ever since she came here, her heart had been racing. However, She knew very well that this racing was not because of Sima Xian, but because of a hint of uneasiness that rose from the depths of her heart. She could not find the source of this uneasiness. She only felt that she should not have come here. Su, what's wrong? Why are you so uneasy? Concern appeared on Sima Xian's face, and he lifted his right hand to grab Bai Su's hand. But before he could touch Bai Su abruptly withdrew her hand as if she had been electrocuted. She raised her head to look at Sima Xian, and there was a brief moment of nervousness and confusion on her face. No, nothing. Big brother Sima, I'm fine. Bai Su squeezed out a smile. She saw the concern in Sima Xian's eyes, but she did not know why. But when she looked at Sima Xian, the image of a figure sitting cross-legged there, panting with rage, suddenly appeared in her mind. Su, did you tell your father about Freezing Sky Cave? Sima Xian didn't mind Bai Su's expression and actions. His expression was the same as usual as he spoke in a gentle voice. Even his words were like the spring breeze. In this cold weather, it always made people feel warm in their hearts. This kind of tone, this kind of smile, this kind of expression was something that Sima Xian could do with ease. He was already used to this, used to the strange gazes that women gave him when he spoke like this. He also believed that Bai Su would act like this. What's wrong with him recently? It's been 7 days, and I haven't seen him. I wonder what he's doing in his cave. Did something happen to him? I don't think so. Bai Su's mind wandered off once again. There was one thing that had been bothering her for the past few days, and that was why Su Ming did not come out of his cave during these 7 days. She was incredibly puzzled about it, but as the days passed by, that puzzlement gradually turned into a faint hint of worry. Su, Sima Xian frowned. Bai Su was momentarily stunned, but when she snapped out of it, she immediately returned to her usual obedient self. Big brother Sima, Su, if anything happens to you, you must tell me. Don't be like this. If I see it, my heart will ache. Sima Xian said softly. If it's because I'm troubling you because I want to enter Freezing Sky Cave, then I can give up. For you, I will give up. A gentle look appeared in Sima Xian's eyes. If it's because I'm troubling you because I asked you to get close to Su Ming, then I can also give up. I told you, for you, I can give up on everything. There is a strange magnetism to Sima Xian's voice, and it was very pleasant to the ears. Bai Su looked at Sima Xian, then at the man before her. Su Ming's face appeared faintly in her eyes once again. These two people were completely different, and their attitudes towards her were also completely different. In fact, the way she acted in front of these two people was also completely different. Su. Sima Xian looked at Bai Su. Big brother Sima, don't worry. I'm fine. I've already talked to my father. He'll definitely agree to you going to Freezing Sky Cave. Bai Su bit her lip and spoke softly. Sima Xian's heart was filled with joy, but worry appeared on his face. I don't care about this. What I care about is, big brother Sima, I'm tired. This was the first time Bai Su interrupted Sima Xian's words. There was a complicated look on her face, along with exhaustion. She stood up lightly, left the chair, and walked into the distance. When Bai Su disappeared into the distance, Sima Xian calmly picked up the wine cup on the table and took a sip before putting it down slowly. He closed his eyes and fell into a state of deep thought for a moment before he got up and walked towards his cave abode. His face was still calm, and not a single hint of change appeared on his face because of Bai Su's expression and actions. Yet when he left the table, the stone chair he sat on shuddered, and cracks appeared on it. In an instant, it turned into ashes and was blown away by the wind. The morning of the 8th day arrived as the sun rose. When the first ray of sunlight shone on the ground, Su Ming opened his eyes and looked at the light outside his cave abode. A dark look gradually appeared on his face. It's been 8 days, and Ziche still hasn't returned. Su Ming got up and walked out his cave abode. He frowned as he stood on the platform. Before Ziche left, he had said that he would be back in at most 3 to 5 days. Most of the squares he went to were very polite to Freezing Sky Clan, and they were also very fair to those who came to trade for their items. After all, This place was within Freezing Sky clan's territory. There were not many people in the land of South Morning who would dare offend Freezing Sky clan. In fact, this place was very close to the great tribe of Freezing Sky. The great tribe of Freezing Sky and Freezing Sky clan complemented each other. They might seem to be two different forces of power, but in truth, they came from the same roots. All the disciples of Freezing Sky clan would go to the great tribe of Freezing Sky to receive their titles once they reached a certain level of cultivation. They would respect the great tribe of Freezing Sky as if they were their own sect. The area around this place might not be impregnable, but it was rare for accidents to happen to the disciples of Freezing Sky clan when they went out. Ziche might not have reached the bone sacrifice realm, but he was still a berserker at the peak of the later stage of the Transcendence realm. He might not be a prodigy like Sima Xin, but he was still enough to catch people's attention. This sort of person did not lack experience in going out either. He also had a great understanding of the terrain around here. That was why Su Ming had let him go on his own to save him the time he needed to train. Yet now, 8 days had passed, and there was no news of Ziche. Su Ming did not believe that Ziche would leave without a reason. This was not beneficial to Ziche. Unless he betrayed his master because of this and never returned to Freezing Sky clan, then as long as his level cultivation did not surpass the 9th summit, and as long as his master did not surpass Tianxiazi, then what awaited him would only be the punishment for not keeping his promise. Su Ming had spent more than 1 or 2 days with Ziche. He did not think that Ziche was an idiot. This person knew how to judge the situation, and more importantly, the seal on him had only been released for 10 days. Besides, Su Ming might not have treated Ziche well, but he was not bad either. Under these circumstances, Su Ming could not find a reason why Ziche did not return. Unless something happened to him. A freezing glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and a murderous aura gathered in his body. After going through his experiences in the land of the shamans, the murderous aura within Su Ming's body was no longer something that came out of nowhere. There was a bloodthirst within it. Almost the instant the murderous aura gathered on Su Ming's body, he lifted his head swiftly and looked towards the horizon in the distance. He saw a long, dull arc coming towards them in a crooked manner. The person in the long arc was naturally Ziche. His face was pale, and there was even blood at the corners of his mouth. He closed in on the 9th summit, and at the instant the long arc disappeared to reveal his body, Ziche coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. There were countless black bugs densely packed together in the blood he coughed up, and as they squirmed about, they started devouring each other madly, creating a terrifying sight to behold. Ziche's face was drained of blood. There was a wound so deep that his bones could be seen on his chest. His right leg had also been pierced through by a black arrow. Waves of black mist spread out from the arrows and turned into phantoms that seemed to be laughing viciously in the air. "Uncle Master!" Ziche trembled and knelt down on the ground with a thud. His eyes were dull and lifeless, and as he laughed brokenly, blood flowed out of his mouth once again. There were still black insects in that blood. There was only a sliver of his life force left. It was clear that this person did not want to kill him and had intentionally left that sliver of life in him. Black Arrow Berserker Zhuge from the great tribe of Freezing Skies, Northern Frontier tribe. The moment Ziche said those words, he fell to the side, unable to withstand the pain from his injuries. Su Ming stood before him with a terrifyingly dark expression. Murderous aura surged in his right eye, but his left eye was as calm as an eternal well. His hair danced in the air. Wind blew past him, but could not blow away the murderous aura spreading out from his body. A cry of surprise came from the stairs before Su Ming. It came from Bai Su, who came every day at this time. She stood there and stared at Su Ming blankly. This was the first time she saw Su Ming like this. The murderous aura in his right eye and the calmness in his left eye formed a powerful clash that made Bai Su's breathing freeze in an instant. Looks like there's going to be another small climax, and there's going to be ahem. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Let's talk about something troublesome. I'm really troubled today. My wife, my child, and my mother-in-law's family decided to go on a trip to Jinpa Lake near our house. Because my father-in-law is recovering well, they won't be back until tomorrow, and I'll have to find my own food tonight. How lonely and troubled is that? I'm so troubled. Is there anyone else who shares the same thoughts as me? Tell me how you lived through such a once-in-a-lifetime troublesome day, and I'll copy you as well. To be continued. If you like this work, please come come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 286. First of all, I would like to recommend Gung Xian's masterpiece, Song Shishing. When you collect it, make sure to mention our Chumo's name. Hee. Secondly, 3 days of 3 chapters in a row. This sentence only has 6 words, but to achieve it, I would need to pay a price of 27,000 words. How many times is that? I have roughly calculated. It should be around 4,000 times. Of course, this is the update at the beginning of the month. This is my promise. Now that I have fulfilled my promise, I can finally raise my head and look at everyone. Today is my singles night. I need monthly tickets to accompany me. I don't care if it's a monthly nanny, a monthly sister, a monthly wing, a monthly sister, a monthly this or that. I don't want any of them. I just want monthly tickets. If you like this work, I welcome you to come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 287. By Sue's heart pounded against her chest. That pounding was due to the great impact Su Ming had brought to her. Under that impact, not only did Bai Su's breathing freeze, she also felt a chill that made her entire body shudder. It was as if the chill in the world was several times colder than the one in the world was spreading outwards with Su Ming as the center. This was the first time Bai Su saw this side of Su Ming, and this side of him made her afraid. She suddenly felt that she had never understood this person before her, just like how he looked right now. Before today, she had never known that a man's soundless rage could turn into such a powerful, murderous aura. Su Ming was no longer the boy he was in the past. He was no longer a reckless child who acted on impulse. He had already learned how to remain calm and was used to it. Even if there was anger in his heart, besides turning it into killing intent in his right eye, he did not act recklessly. Instead, he lifted his right hand and tapped the center of Ziche's brows. With that one tap, Ziche's body instantly started trembling uncontrollably. Su Ming crouched down and brought out some medicinal pills. Once he placed them in Ziche's mouth, he helped him up and had him sit down cross-legged by the side. Su Ming pressed his right hand against the top of Ziche's skull. The moment the power of transcendence surged into Ziche's body, his body started trembling even more viciously. He coughed out a mouthful of blood, and it was still filled with the squirming black bugs. Su Ming frowned. He noticed that once his power of transcendence surged into Ziche's body, it immediately turned into threads that disappeared into every part of Ziche's body, as if they were being devoured and absorbed. This was something normal, and it was also what Su Ming wanted to do. He wanted to use his own power of transcendence to nourish Ziche's body along with the medicinal pills Ziche had swallowed. Only then would he be able to wake up as soon as possible and recover slightly. Yet now, Su Ming's power of transcendence was continuously disappearing into Ziche's body. But not only did Ziche's condition not improve, it was instead becoming worse. There was still a hint of life in him previously, but now, that hint of life was rapidly disappearing. Once it completely disappeared, then Ziche would definitely die. Su Ming let out a cold harumph, and the killing intent in his right eye grew stronger. He might not have treated Ziche as a member of the Ninth Summit, but ever since Ziche came to the Ninth Summit, besides his initial unruliness, he had always obeyed Su Ming's orders. Over the past few days, Su Ming could not find anything displeasing about Ziche. More importantly, Ziche had gradually changed the way he addressed Su Ming from Uncle Master to Master. This was not something Su Ming requested, but something that Ziche did naturally. Su Ming had always believed in the depths of his heart that his eldest senior brother could injure Ziche, his second senior brother could, and his third senior brother could as well. There was no need to even mention his master, but besides these few people, if anyone else wanted to injure Su Ming's follower, they would have to pay the price. As he let out a cold harumph, the mark of the green sword shone at the center of Su Ming's brows. Immediately, his divine sense spread out and gathered on Zichei's body. Once it scanned through his entire body, it charged straight into his body and scanned through every inch of his body in an incredibly detailed manner. After a moment, a sharp glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. With his divine sense, he could clearly sense that there was something that looked like a cocoon in Zichei's abdomen. That thing was only the size of a fist, but there seemed to be no end to it. There were black insects continuously crawling out of it. These insects existed in Zichei's body and were continuously absorbing his life force and flesh to strengthen themselves. They looked incredibly vicious, but there was also a hint of brutality within them. Su Ming lifted his right hand from the top of Zichei's skull and sliced through the robes on Zichei's chest. Once he pressed his hand against his abdomen, the power of transcendence and his divine sense fused together and swept through the cocoon-like object on Zichei's abdomen. Zichei's eyes were closed, but he let out a shrill scream of pain. As he screamed, Su Ming's right hand turned into a claw and pierced through the flesh on Zichei's abdomen. He grabbed the cocoon, yanked it out, and forcefully pulled it out of Zichei's body. The instant the cocoon was taken out, Zichei's eyes flew open, and an incredibly exhausted look appeared on his face. At the same time, Su Ming pressed his left hand against the wound on Zichei's abdomen. The power of transcendence surged into the wound, causing the flesh to heal rapidly. At the same time, a large amount of black insects crawled out of Zichei's eyes, ears, nose, and mouth under Su Ming's power of transcendence. They struggled for a few moments before falling to the ground. A hint of red gradually appeared on Zichei's face, and his life force slowly stopped fading away. Instead, as he panted and sat down to meditate, he began to slowly recover. However, the black arrow that had been stabbed into his right leg was still releasing waves of black smoke that surrounded it. That black smoke would occasionally gather together to form phantom shadows that seemed to be letting out soundless roars. Su Ming pulled back his left hand and was just about to take the black arrow when he stopped. He stared at the arrow and frowned. He had a feeling that this arrow was not something that could be easily taken out. This is an arrow from a black arrow berserker. Those who are struck by it will feel as if they were poisoned, and their life force will continuously disappear. If we don't use the right method and pull out this arrow, then Zichei will die in his weakened state. Bai Su's voice traveled into his ears weakly. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he averted his gaze from Zichei's body and looked at the cocoon in his right hand. The cocoon was entirely black and looked like a stone. When Su Ming took it out of Zichei's body, it was still soft, but once it came into contact with wind, it rapidly hardened. There was a crack at the edge of the cocoon, and black insects crawled out of it. However, the crack was rapidly closing up, and the insects that had crawled out previously also fell to the ground in the cold wind. As he stared at the cocoon in his hand, a strange light appeared in Su Ming's eyes. This doesn't belong to Freezing Sky Clan. A weak voice filled with fear came from before Su Ming. As Su Ming lifted his head, he saw Bai Su walking to the platform with a hesitant look on her face. Items from Freezing Sky Clan can withstand the cold, but this thing stiffened when it came into contact with cold wind. It's impossible for it to belong to Freezing Sky Clan, Bai Su said softly. Su Ming did not speak. He lowered his head and continued staring at the cocoon in his hands. A frown gradually appeared on his face. His eyes might have seemed calm, but no one knew that when Su Ming saw Zichei spit out the insects and held the cocoon in his hands, there was a huge storm raging in his heart. Bai Su hesitated for a moment before he continued. Even in the great tribe of Freezing Sky, it's unlikely that something like this would exist because the climate here isn't suitable for it to survive. Look, they're all dead now. The cocoon in your hands will also turn into a dead cocoon soon. What is the relationship between Northern Frontier Tribe and the great tribe of Freezing Sky? Su Ming asked slowly. There are 4 branches in the great tribe of freezing sky, and Northern Frontier is one of them. As for Zhuge, I've heard of him before. He's not a disciple of Freezing Sky Clan, but the son of Northern Frontier tribe's chief of war. Yeah. Bai Su paused for a moment before she told Su Ming what she knew. However, there was one thing she did not say in her hesitation. Zhuge had a lot of dealings with Sima Xen. What do you mean by a black arrow berserker? As Su Ming spoke, he moved his gaze away from the cocoon in his hands and looked at Zi Chei's right leg, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The phantom shadow formed by the black mist floated in the air ferociously from the arrow. The berserker warriors of Northern Frontier tribe trained differently from us in Freezing Sky Clan. They practice blood refinement, but they don't transcend or bone sacrifice. Instead, as they continue training, they walk down the path of stimulating all the power in their blood and making their physical bodies indestructible. This unique method of training belongs solely to Northern Frontier tribe and is rarely taught to outsiders. Ever since Northern Frontier tribe surrendered to the great tribe of Freezing Sky, they also gained the respect of the great tribe of Freezing Sky, allowing them to keep their unique method of training. Black Arrow is one of their names. It's blue, black, green, and purple. A berserker with a black arrow is equivalent to those in the bone sacrifice realm. Besides the method of training that Northern Frontier tribe doesn't teach to outsiders, they also have a legacy of creating arrows, which is also a secret. All the arrows they create must be shot by members of their tribe who have trained in the method of training that they don't teach to outsiders. They have the power to absorb life force. This arrow can't be taken down easily. They must first refine the black mist on it and offer up enough life force as a sacrifice to make the black mist disappear. Only then can they take the arrow, Bai Su said softly. Her explanation was very detailed, almost telling Su Ming everything she knew. Su Ming looked at the arrow on Zi Chei's right leg, who was meditating, and the murderous aura in his right eye grew stronger. What is this black mist? Su Ming asked calmly. It's a phantom. This is the name Northern Frontier tribe created. Every single adult berserker will be sent to a mysterious place in Northern Frontier to search for their phantom. Once they find their phantom, the arrows they shoot will contain the power of the phantom. The more people they kill, the stronger their phantom will become. In the end, it can even reach a shocking level. The great tribe of Freezing Sky also paid a price to subdue this tribe and named it Northern Frontier. What was this tribe called before they were subdued by Freezing Sky? Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence before he looked at Bai Su. Bai Su's mastery of this knowledge surprised him. Phantom Deus, Bai Su whispered. Once she finished speaking, she hesitated for a moment before she cast a glance at Su Ming. Perhaps I could try to get rid of the phantom aura on the arrow. Su Ming looked at her. I might not have a high level of cultivation, but I've liked reading ancient scrolls since I was young. I know a lot of things that other people have never heard of. I also learned quite a lot about some of the strange tribe spells from my father. Bai Su said softly. She did not tell Su Ming that due to the things that happened when she was young, her father's only interest towards her could be said to have spared no effort in finding an endless amount of valuable ancient scrolls and spells that did not require her to use her cultivation base. How confident are you? Su Ming asked calmly. Bai Su hesitated for a moment before she whispered. 30%, 20%, perhaps even lower. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he asked unhurriedly. The consequence of failure is Zi Chei's death. Bai Su did not speak for a long while. After a long while, she nodded her head with a dejected look on her face. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 288. If we don't cure him, then he won't be able to live for long. First, his power will gradually decline. Once he loses his power, his flesh and blood will come into contact with his life force. When he dies, he will turn into a ghost and return to his master's side, Bai Su said in a low voice. Northern Frontier tribe also belongs to Freezing Sky. If Zhua Gu killed Ziche, will Freezing Sky Clan say anything about this? Su Ming looked at the cocoon in his hands. That cocoon was now completely stiff and felt like an ice stone when he held it. You don't know? Bai Su was momentarily stunned before she seemed to have understood something. She cast a glance at Ziche, and a complicated look appeared in her eyes. What? Su Ming lifted his head and looked at Bai Su. 3 months ago, Ziche's master informed the school that he was expelled from the second summit. He's no longer a disciple of Freezing Sky Clan. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he looked towards Ziche, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. There was not much blood on his face, but there was a determined look on his face. He could not hear the conversation between Su Ming and Bai Su. At that moment, he had to constantly recover, or else he would not be able to withstand the power of the arrow. 3 months ago, Su Ming knew that this had happened during the 5 days he was away from Freezing Sky Clan, but he had not seen anything out of the ordinary from Ziche. However, it was clear that this was not something normal to Ziche. If it wasn't for this, then he wouldn't have lowered his head every time he saw his sister. Bai Su sighed softly. Su Ming fell silent and looked at the cocoon in his hands. After a long while, he squeezed it. You said that this insect isn't something from Freezing Sky and that it dies when it runs into the cold? Su Ming's voice was calm, and no one could tell if he was happy or angry. Bai Su nodded. Su Ming crouched down and picked up a small insect that looked as if it was dead. Once he held it in his hands, a strong wave of flames spread out from his palm and enveloped the insect. In the flames, the insect's stiff body suddenly shuddered and it flipped over. Its spirits were lifted and it let out hissing sounds. It also moved, wanting to crawl into the flesh on Su Ming's palm. Yet before it could crawl in, the fire on Su Ming's palm instantly disappeared. As the freezing wind blew towards him, Su Ming clenched his fist. Cracking sounds traveled into the air, and only then did Su Ming let go. As Bai Su sucked in a sharp breath, she saw that the black insect in Su Ming's palm had already turned into powder. These insects weren't dead yet. They were just hibernating. They'll wake up when they're touched by fire. Su Ming waved his hand, and the powder on his palm scattered with the wind. This bug is like this, and this cocoon is also like this. Su Ming's voice was cold. A scene from his memories appeared before his eyes. In that scene was a chain, and there was an illusory figure on it. That figure's body was covered in countless wounds, and there seemed to be an innumerable amount of black insects that looked exactly like the small insect in front of him. Lei Chun. Su Ming closed his eyes. He did not know whether the things that had happened on the chains of Han Mountain were real or fake. He could not tell even now, but the appearance of the insect had shaken Su Ming. He had never seen this insect before he challenged the chains of Han Mountain. If it was just a figment of his imagination or an illusion, then now that he saw the same insect again, he did not believe that he could have imagined it. If it's real, then why is the truth different from my memories? If it's fake, then why is this illusion real? And it's exactly the same. This is a clue. Su Ming opened his eyes, and Bai Su's soft voice reached his ears. Bai Su looked at Su Ming and whispered, "Let me try with Ziche, there's no need. There's another way to heal him without any risk," Su Ming said calmly. His voice was cold, and a red glare appeared in his right eye. "What is it?" Bai Su was stunned. She did not understand the meaning behind Su Ming's words. "Kill Zhuge and destroy his phantom. The phantom aura on the arrow in Ziche's leg will naturally disappear." Once Su Ming finished speaking, he looked at Bai Su. "You're more familiar with this area than I am. Bring me to Northern Frontier Tribe." Bai Su bit her bottom lip and looked at Su Ming blankly, but she shook her head resolutely. "With your power, you'll definitely die if you go to Northern Frontier Tribe alone. I won't bring you." "I'm not alone." Su Ming turned around and let out a shrill howl towards the sky. His howl reverberated through the 9th summit, causing the glaciers on the mountain to tremble. The instant his howl reverberated in the air, Hu Zi was drinking wine in his cave abode. He narrowed his eyes and grinned foolishly, preparing to hug his wine gourd and sleep so that he could recover his energy and go out at night. Yet almost at the moment he closed his eyes, and before his snores could travel out, Su Ming's howl immediately traveled into his cave abode. That howl was like thunder rumbling, causing Hu Zi's cave abode to tremble. He opened his eyes swiftly, and once he rubbed them, surprise appeared on his face. "What's wrong with Fourth?" Without any hesitation, he immediately picked up his wine gourd and rushed out of his cave abode, charging straight towards Su Ming's cave abode. At the same time, at the mountainside in the middle section of the ninth summit was a place where flowers were blooming. Green grass covered the ground, creating a scene that looked as if time had been reversed in the snow. Second senior brother sat cross-legged in the middle section of the ninth summit, maintaining a posture where sunlight shone on the side of his face. There was a gentle smile on his lips. Before him, the grass on the ground was moving without wind. There were a few strands of grass growing rapidly, and once they intertwined with each other, they looked as if they were weaving something. Second senior brother's expression was incredibly focused, but at that moment, Su Ming's piercing howl reverberated in the air from the ninth summit. There was a shocking, murderous aura within that howl, and under that murderous aura, the few strands of grass weaving before second senior brother froze for a moment. Surprise appeared on second senior brother's face. He lifted his head and cast a glance at Su Ming's cave abode in the distance. Who provoked youngest junior brother? Second senior brother stood up unhurriedly and patted his robes. With his hands behind his back, he walked towards Su Ming's cave abode with the sunlight shining on the side of his face. His feet looked as if he was stepping on the ground, but in truth, with each step he took, he would maintain a height of 1 inch from the ground. At the same time, Su Ming's howl traveled outwards. A pair of eyes appeared in the darkness of the isolation grounds at the foot of the ninth summit's layer of ice. This murderous aura. If I don't vent it, it'll be hard for me to calm down. Youngest junior brother, even if you want to do it, I can't come out yet. A mumbling voice could be heard faintly in the silent glacier. Yet suddenly, a crack appeared on an ice rock that was the height of a person. Fire spread out from within the crack, as if it was burning the ice rock. In an instant, more cracks appeared on the ice rock, and, eventually, it exploded with a bang. The instant it exploded, a black hand stretched out from within the ice rock. That black hand exuded a freezing aura that surged into the sky. Once it stretched out slowly, it pressed down on the ice by the side. Gradually, as if it was crawling out, a man whose entire body was pitch black appeared. That man was half naked. Once he crawled out, he closed his eyes and knelt down on one knee in the direction of the gaze. All those years ago, my 300 slaves stopped their slaughter at the same time as me and isolated themselves here with me. Now, I've awakened you, one of my 300 slaves, to help me do something. Give me your orders, young master. The burly man suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were gray, and they were filled with madness and mercilessness. Anyone who looked at them would feel a chill in their hearts. At the same time, they could also sense the bloodthirst coming from the burly man. Protect my junior brothers and listen to their orders. If necessary, I'll allow you to cast a forbidden curse. The gaze that existed in the glacier gradually disappeared. Only those words echoed in the air, and in the midst of the calmness was a murderous intent. The man grinned and licked his lips. Once he bowed, he stood up, lifted his foot, and took a step to the side. His body immediately turned into a layer of black smoke that crawled into the ice walls around him and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Tian Xiezi yawned and stretched his back at the top of the ninth summit. As he walked, he mumbled something under his breath. Once he arrived at the top of the mountain, he sucked in a deep breath and swayed his body. He even propped himself up and down on the ground a few times before he stood up properly again. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. I managed to prop up 10 of them today, one more than last year. Good. Tian Xiezi, you're just too good. You're the strongest lad I've ever seen in my life. Tian Xiezi, you're good. I'm proud of you. With a satisfied smile on his face, Tian Xiezi mumbled to himself for a long while before he lifted his head. He was prepared to roar at the sky before he flew off in a certain direction to train his body in the morning. However, right when he opened his mouth and was about to roar, someone beat him to it and let out a shrill howl. That howl rumbled and reverberated in all directions, causing Tian Xiezi to be momentarily stunned. I haven't even shouted yet. So why is there a sound? Tian Xiezi blinked, then lifted his hand to cover his mouth. When he saw that the sound was still ringing in his ears, he quickly crouched down and stuck his head out to look down from the edge of the mountain. Fourth's roar is too unpleasant. Third's rushing over. Second's also going over. Damn it. Why is my eldest disciple who's in isolation joining in as well? Are they going to fight? This is fun. Excitement appeared in Tian Xiezi's eyes, and he quickly rolled up his sleeves, looking as if he wanted to join in. As Su Ming's shrill howl reverberated in the air, Hu Zi was the first to arrive on the platform outside Su Ming's cave abode. The moment he arrived on the platform, he saw Zi Chei's wretched state, and his eyes widened in anger. Damn it all! Who hurt my cat? Soon after, second senior brother placed his hand behind his back and walked over with a gentle smile on his face. But when he saw Zi Chei's face, the smile on his face disappeared. Youngest junior brother, who did this? Northern Frontier Tribe's Black Arrow Berserker, Zhuge. He's the son of Northern Frontier's Chief of War, Zhuya, Su Ming said calmly as he looked at Zi Chei. Damn it all! F***CK his bird. How dare he bully my cat? Hu Zi roared by the side. This isn't good. Second senior brother shook his head, and the smile appeared on his face once again. But this time, there was a ghastly air to his smile. We won't F***CK his bird. We'll cut off his bird's head and eat it. Second senior brother's smile grew wider. As Bai Su listened, her face turned red and she spat in her heart. There were only 3 days left until the end of the month. I've had a great time writing these past few days, and I'm very satisfied with them. That's why I want to get more votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 289. Cut him off and eat the bird's head. When Hu Zi heard this, he was momentarily stunned. He instinctively lifted his hand and was about to scratch his head, but he felt that it was a little inappropriate. He had only lifted his hand halfway before he immediately put it down. He had always thought that he was the smartest person in the 9th Summit. He could not let anyone know that he did not quite understand the meaning behind those words. That's right, that's what I meant. Cut him off and eat the bird's head. Darn it, I'll eat it after I cut it off. Hu Zi patted his chest and looked at second senior brother with a silly grin on his face. Second senior brother blinked and smiled gently. When he heard Hu Zi's words, surprise, disbelief, hesitation, praise, and anticipation appeared in his eyes. The change in his expression could not be seen by anyone who was not familiar with him. Hu Zi could see it. He had a vague feeling that something was off, but he knew that he could not show that he did not understand. He continuously told himself that he was the smartest person in the 9th Summit and that he understood everything. That was why he lifted his head and puffed out his chest before nodding towards second senior brother sternly. Second senior brother's expression also became stern. He patted Hu Zi's shoulder as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he let out a long sigh and admiration appeared on his face. The uneasiness in Hu Zi's heart increased, but he still put on a nonchalant expression. Zi Chei sat there without moving. The ghostly aura black arrow surrounded his right leg, causing his face to occasionally turn red, but very soon it would turn pale again. When second senior brother patted Hu Zi's shoulder, Su Ming turned around and looked at Bai Su. Now, can you lead the way to Northern Frontier Tribe for the 3 of us? Su Ming's voice was calm, but the murderous aura in his right eye and the calmness in his left eye formed a strange feeling that they had fused together, causing all those who saw it to feel their hearts tremble. Bai Su lowered her head and remained silent for a moment before she lifted her head and looked at Su Ming before nodding her head lightly. The moment she nodded, Su Ming took a step forward and appeared beside her. As she let out a cry of surprise, he wrapped his arm around Bai Su's slender waist and brought her into a long arc that charged into the sky. Baisu's vision blurred, and she became even more dazed. Her heart raced against her chest, and a strong presence belonging to a man crashed into her. Not only could she hear her own heartbeat, she could also feel Su Ming's heartbeat as he held her. This strange feeling made her blush even more. Even when she was with Su Ma Xian, they had only held hands at most. Due to Su Ma Xian's scruples and Baisu's nervousness, she had never been hugged like she was now. The moment Su Ming carried Baisu in his arms and stepped into the sky, Huzi brought out a pot of wine and took a big swig from it. A ferocious look appeared on his face as he grinned. With one move, he followed behind Su Ming and charged forward. Second brother's expression remained gentle. With a smile on his face, he walked towards the sky with his hands behind his back. With every step he took, there would be a faint flash of green light in the void. As he moved faster and faster, he looked like a green rainbow cutting through the sky. There was an indistinct wisp of black smoke following behind the three of them. That black smoke floated about and was difficult for anyone to notice. But if anyone really noticed it and observed it closely, they would find that there was a shocking, murderous aura contained within that black smoke. That faint black smoke was one of the 300 slaves of eldest senior brother. He obeyed the wishes of his young master to protect the young master's junior brothers. In fact, if necessary, he could even unleash the greatest power of his clan, the forbidden curse. Even the eldest senior brother's slave did not notice an old man in white robes standing in the sky behind the black smoke. That old man's face was filled with excitement as he rubbed his hands continuously. Sometimes he would roll up his sleeves, revealing his skinny arms. His eyes were shining brightly as he followed behind cautiously. They're going to fight? That's fun. Fourth isn't stupid. He knows that he can't fight alone. It's more exciting if he fights in a group. I can't let them know that I'm following behind them. That'll make it even more exciting. But these brats still can't compare to me when I was young. They know how to fight in a group, but why don't they know how to wear a mask? That old man was Tian Xiezi. Besides excitement, there was also excitement on his face, but it was soon replaced by dissatisfaction. This was the first time in many years that the entire Ninth Summit had moved out. They left together and headed straight for the northern border. If Zhuge, the Black Arrow Berserker from Northern Frontier, knew that he would end up like this after he injured Ziche, and that he would draw out the master and disciples of the Ninth Summit, who were all monsters in the eyes of outsiders, then would he have immediately turned around and left the moment he saw Ziche? Northern Frontier Tribe is about a day's journey away from Freezing Sky Clan. They're also in a land of frost, but it's different from Freezing Sky Clan. Their tribe isn't built on ice mountains or glaciers, but on a snow plain. As Baisu charged forward with Su Ming in his arms, the freezing wind blew against them. As she shivered, she immediately felt a wave of warmth coming from Su Ming's body and fusing into her own. Under that warmth, the bone-chilling wind also seemed to have become gentler. Baisu's face was flushed red. After a moment of silence, she spoke in a low voice. It could be said that she had recalled all the things related to Northern Frontier Tribe in her memories, so that Su Ming and the others could make detailed preparations. The Northern Borderline Tribe is very big. It looks like a city, but there are no walls around it. There are only houses made of ice. To the people of the Northern Borderline Tribe, ice and snow are a part of their lives, and they can't be stopped outside. In front of the Northern Borderline Tribe, there are two huge statues. These two statues are the carvings of two ferocious evil spirits. They are fighting each other, and their huge bodies form the gate of the Northern Borderline Tribe. Baisu's voice echoed in the howling wind. As it traveled into Su Ming's ears, it was also heard by Hu Zi and second senior brother. It said that Northern Frontier Tribe had 3 green arrow berserker masters whose power was equivalent to that of a powerful berserker in the Berserker Soul realm. One of them even had half a foot into the purple arrow realm. This sort of powerful tribe might not be a big tribe, but it was enough to make big tribes wary. The great tribe of Freezing Sky had to pay a price to conquer it. Once they killed the elder of Northern Frontier Tribe, who was half a foot into the purple arrow realm, they also killed 2 green arrow berserker masters before Phantom Deus subdued them and changed their name to Northern Frontier. The only remaining powerful berserker in the Northern Frontier tribe was the chief of battle of Northern Frontier tribe. That person survived by a stroke of luck, but not long after, he died because his life force reached its limit. The current Northern Frontier tribe might not be as glorious as its ancestors were in the past, but it's still not to be underestimated. It's especially so for Northern Frontier tribe, which is one of the 4 great branches under the great tribe of Freezing Sky. There must be a powerful berserker in the Berserker Soul realm guarding it, because all the elders of the branches must go to the great tribe of Freezing Sky to train when they attained great completion in the Bone Sacrifice realm. Only when they successfully reached the Berserker Soul realm would they be given the status of elder. Northern Frontier tribe did not have an elder for 2,000-something years in the past, but I remember the ancient scrolls mentioning that an elder who was acknowledged by Freezing Sky appeared in Northern Frontier around 100 years ago. That person's name is Mo Shan. Baisu spoke quickly and told them everything he knew. The 4 of them had already traveled for almost half a day. The land was covered in white, and they could not see the end of it. It was all snow and ice that formed the sky and the earth. As they flew in the sky, it was rare for them to see anyone coming towards them. It was as if there were no longer any living beings in the world. The only ones left were Su Ming and the others. There were no footprints on the ground either. If a normal person came to this place where the snow mountains and plains intersected, they would definitely die. The cold wind moaned, sounding like the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves. Occasionally, a snow whirlwind would appear on the ground and sweep in all directions, pushing away the snow. It was a shocking sight. This was a white world, a world of ice and snow. It was a world where no other colors could be seen. Besides the elder, Mo Shan, there are 4 other leaders in Northern Frontier tribe. They are the chief of battle, the phantom deus, and the chief of spirit. These 4 people's levels of cultivation are also unfathomable. Even if they aren't in the Berserker Soul realm, they should be close to it, especially the phantom deus. We have to pay even more attention to him, because of a legend that no one else has ever heard of. This legend is something I read in an incomplete ancient scroll. It said that ever since the tribe appeared in the land of South Morning, no one has ever seen the Phantom Deus tribe's Phantom Deus. It doesn't matter whether it's his clothes, his voice, or his actions. Over the years, he has given off a feeling that he is the Phantom Deus tribe's Phantom Deus, and he will never die. Throughout the ages, he has always been the Phantom Deus. Baisu's voice became deeper, and it echoed in Su Ming and the other 2's ears. As the moaning wind and her words appeared, a mysterious air appeared out of nowhere. Youngest junior brother, this last knows a lot. This is very good. A smile appeared on second senior brother's face, and he gave Baisu a praising look. Baisu quickly returned his greeting with a smile while she was in Su Ming's arms. Thank you for your praise, Uncle Master. I just like reading books. Just like youngest junior brother, you could just add my second senior brother to the list. Second senior brother smiled. Baisu's cheeks became slightly flushed again. She did not know what was wrong with her, but she kept blushing today. Why isn't there a tribe leader? Su Ming suddenly asked. This was also what second senior brother wanted to ask. As for Hu Zi, he was drinking and staring straight ahead. Occasionally, he would lick his lips, and a hint of cruelty would appear on his face. He had not even listened to Baisu's words. In his mind, if they fought when they met, there would naturally be someone to remind them how they should fight. He still believed that this was what a smart person should do. Northern Frontier tribe has always retained the traditions of their ancestors, Phantom Deus tribe. They don't have a tribe leader. Their tribe leader is an ethereal being. It's said that he's a ferocious phantom in the world, but it's just a symbol, Baisu said softly. A thought appeared in Su Ming's heart. Once he heard about Northern Frontier tribe, especially when he heard about the tribe leader, the first thing that popped up in his head was the old man from Lizard Shaman tribe summoning his tribe's totem, the giant lizard. That giant lizard was also just a symbol, a totem. Northern Frontier, Phantom Deus. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Time passed by slowly like that. Su Ming and the others traveled faster and faster. When dusk arrived, Bai Su's breathing suddenly quickened. "We're here." To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 290. Su Ming's footsteps came to a halt. Hu Zi, who was by his side, took a few steps forward with his wine gourd in hand. A bloodthirsty look gradually appeared in his eyes. As for second senior brother, he had his hands behind his back and was standing calmly by the side. It was a pity that the sun was covered by clouds. Even though light could be seen on the ground, no flames could be seen. About several tens of thousands of feet before Su Ming and the other two, they could see a large group of buildings. It was a vast expanse of snow. The wind howled and swept away the snow. Right before Su Ming and the other two were two gigantic statues. These two statues were carved with a ferocious look that made them look like malicious spirits. They were fighting against each other, and a murderous aura that surged into the sky spread out from the two statues without any attempt to hide it. It filled the entire area. Behind the two gigantic statues of malicious spirits were rows upon rows of houses that were not neatly arranged. These houses were all made of ice, and they stretched out in a large area. It was difficult to see where the borders of the houses were at first glance. This was a tribe that was even bigger than a city. Its size did not lie in how majestic it was, but in its length. It seemed to be endless, and it stretched far into the distance. If anyone stood in the sky above the tribe and looked down from an incredibly high position, they would be able to see clearly that northern frontier tribe on the vast expanse of snow was in the shape of an arrow. It was like a gigantic arrow that had been branded on the plains of northern frontier. Behind the snowy plains were layers upon layers of land that were deeply sunken all the way to the bottommost layer that was connected to the ground beneath the snowy plains. There was much less snow there, and if one could see further, they would discover that on the land outside, which was clearly much lower than the snowy plains, there was gradually greenery in the distance, and as it extended down, one could see the singing of birds and the fragrance of flowers. The plains of snow were like a ravine that separated winter and summer. Northern Frontier tribe existed in this place. It existed in the southern part of the great tribe of Freezing Sky, but in the entire map of the land of South Morning, it belonged to the north. They were stationed here to protect the northern gate of the great tribe of Freezing Sky. This is a part of Northern Frontier tribe in the land of Freezing Sky. The other part is located under the snow plains. Bai Su said softly. Northern Frontier tribe has continued the tradition of Phantom Deus. Their berserkers have very long hair, because when they fight against outsiders, those who die will lose their heads, and when they fight against their own people, they will have two choices. One is to have their heads cut off, and the other is to have their hair cut off. That's why the longer a person's hair is, it means that they rarely fail. In fact, there's a possibility that they have never failed before, Bai Su whispered as she looked at Su Ming. Once she finished speaking, she hesitated for a moment. Su Ming, I suggest that you put on some masks. If you do that, I think it might be better. The moment Bai Su finished speaking, and before Su Ming could even speak, second senior brother looked at Bai Su with an admiring gaze, then at Su Ming. Little junior brother, this girl is very good. But lass, I've been prepared for this since a long time ago. Second senior brother smiled gently and lifted his right hand to bring out a few black masks from his bosom. Ahem, the disciples of the Ninth Summit don't need to hide their faces, and neither do we find it beneath us to hide our faces, but a stern look appeared on second senior brother's face as he looked at Su Ming and Hu Zi. You have to think about our master. He's old, and his brain will react slower when he lies. We have to find an excuse for him, don't you think so? We're not afraid of revealing our faces, but for our master and for him, we can only endure this humiliation and wear these masks. Hu Zi blinked and nodded his head in agreement. Second senior brother is right. Off for master. After all, we're doing this for master. Second senior brother, I can endure this, I'll endure it. As he spoke, he snatched one of the masks and put it on his head, revealing only his eyes as he chuckled. Third junior brother, I'm sorry. Second senior brother patted Huzi's shoulder with a sentimental look on his face. Second senior brother, this is nothing from Master. Huzi stopped, laughing, and determination appeared in his eyes. We're all Master's good disciples. Youngest junior brother, what about you? Second senior brother handed a mask to Su Ming. Su Ming took it with an odd look on his face and put it on his head without another word. Bai Su widened her eyes. She suddenly felt as if she had never understood the Ninth Summit as she did at that moment. Just what sort of people are they? Bai Su rubbed the center of her brows. She originally thought that it would be difficult for her to persuade these people to put on the masks, but the way things developed made her suddenly feel that she was still too young compared to these people. Master, we have to endure this humiliation for you, but we're willing to do it because we're your good disciples. We love you. Second senior brother puffed out his chest and lifted his head. He put on the mask and winked at Su Ming and Huzi before he threw a mask on the ground in a seemingly unintentional manner. With one move, he turned into a long arc and charged towards Northern Frontier Tribe. Huzi stomped on the ground with his right foot. Snow flew into the air, and he charged after his second senior brother. Find a safe place and wait for me. Su Ming cast a glance at Bai Su, then turned around and took a step into the air to chase after his second senior brother and Huzi. The three of them were like shooting stars in the sky, and their destination was Northern Frontier Tribe. Bai Ling stood there and watched the three of them leave into the distance. After a moment of silence, she sat down cross-legged. There was a complicated look on her face, along with a hint of worry. The three disciples of the Ninth Summit charged forward in the sky and rapidly closed in on Northern Frontier Tribe. Second senior brother, is Master really behind us? Huzi's eyes were filled with excitement and brutality as he asked in a low voice. Of course. Master is faster than us. Besides, when we left the Ninth Summit, I saw him crawling on the mountain in white robes and peeping at us. Second senior brother also lowered his voice. I saw it too, Su Ming said in a low voice. Haha, then that's right. I left a hood for Master. Let's kill them today. Kill them? No matter how big this is, we have Master holding the fort. What are we afraid of? Second senior brother was clearly excited as well. His eyes were shining brightly. How are we going to kill them? Huzi lifted the hood off his head and licked his lips. Third, fourth, today I'll tell you the principles of the Ninth Summit. This is what eldest senior brother told me in the past. Second senior brother looked at Su Ming and Huzi. Those who harm even a single plant in the Ninth Summit will be killed. Those who harm the servants of the Ninth Summit will be killed. Those who harm the disciples of the Ninth Summit will be killed with all their berserkers. The Ninth Summit will never cause trouble, but if anyone provokes us, then we will kill them to tell them that the Ninth Summit is not something they can afford to provoke. That's why we're looking for Zhuge, but if anyone tries to stop us, then they will die. There was a murderous intent in second senior brother's voice, and it was as cold as ice. Huzi took a deep breath. Once he lifted the hood off a little and put it back on, a bloodthirsty glint appeared in his eyes, but he hesitated for a moment. As he flew forward, he looked at second senior brother. Second senior brother, why didn't you help me when I was bullied in the past? This isn't in line with the principles of the Ninth Summit. Huzi was very displeased. If you didn't peep at me every night, I would have helped you as well. Second senior brother shook his head and sighed. Su Ming did not speak. Green light shone at the center of his brows, and the murderous aura in his right eye filled his body. He was like an arrow filled with killing intent, and as he charged forward, he appeared right in front of the three people. The three of them charged forward, and they were getting closer to Northern Frontier Tribe. At the same time, Bai Su, who was sitting cross-legged behind them, cast some unknown art. Her body gradually turned transparent, as if she was an illusion that could not be seen. Yet at that moment, Bai Su's eyes flew open, and she almost let out a cry of surprise, because a layer of black smoke had appeared before her. That black smoke filled the air and charged forward while sticking close to the snow. In the span of a breath, It had already charged into the distance, covering a distance of 10,000 feet. Last, don't make a sound. What caused Baisu to not let out a cry of surprise was an old voice that traveled into her ears. Soon after, Baisu saw an old man dressed in white walking towards her from the snow. The old man bent his back and walked over with light steps. When he was before Baisu, he even placed his index finger by his lips and shushed her. A strange look immediately appeared on Baisu's face. She had seen this old man before and knew that he was Su Ming's master, Tian Xiezi. Tian Xiezi lowered his head and picked up the hood Su Ming's second senior brother had thrown away, then mumbled a few words under his breath. Those brats sure have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Looks like they're not stupid since they know to wear hoods. They even left one for me. Damn it, did they see me? As the white-robed Tian Xiezi mumbled, he put on the hood and turned around to look at the stunned Baisu. A smile appeared on his face. You're my fourth friend, right? What do you think? Do I look good this way? Baisu was stunned, then nodded instinctively. A pleased look immediately appeared on the white-robed Tian Xiezi's face. He turned around and charged towards Northern Frontier Tribe, where Su Ming and the other two were running. Almost at the instant, the three of them were about 10,000 feet away from Northern Frontier Tribe. Northern Frontier Tribe immediately noticed them. However, this tribe was completely different from the other tribes Su Ming had seen in the past. If it was any other tribe, someone would have flown out to stop them. However, it was different for Northern Frontier Tribe. Once they noticed Su Ming and the other two approaching, only a portion of the tribe members stopped what they were doing and lifted their heads to look at the sky coldly. Most of the other tribe members simply ignored them. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming and the other two arrived outside the gate formed by the two statues of Northern Frontier Tribe. Second senior brother walked out with a smile on his face and wrapped his fist in his palm to bow towards the Northern Frontier Tribe's tribe members who were staring at them coldly, without saying a single word. I am Gong's son, who of the third summit of Freezing Sky Clan. I would like to meet you, Brother Zhuge. Please help me send a message. The people who were looking at them coldly from within the gate of Northern Frontier Tribe still did not say a word. Second senior brother shook his head. You people are far too rude. This is not good. As he spoke, he took a step forward. The instant his foot landed, the entire ground began to shake. The snowflakes on the ground swirled up into the air, covering the sky and covering the earth. The expressions of the Northern Frontier Tribe members who had been in different moments ago flickered. Hand over Zhuge. Anyone who tries to stop us will die. Huzi lifted his hands, and a gigantic battle axe manifested in his left hand. He held the gourd in his right hand, took a big gulp from it, and rushed out. The last 30 hours, the top 10 for the monthly votes are on the verge of falling. Please get monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 291. Huzi was like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain. As he stepped on the ground, the snow on the ground danced in the air, causing the area around him to become indistinct. However, his body charged out from the illusion, and the gigantic axe in his right hand was something Su Ming had never seen before. The axe looked rusty, but the handle was made from a beast bone. As Huzi charged out, a tiger's roar shook the sky faintly, and he charged in a Northern Frontier Tribe's gate. Second senior brother's presence was like a rainbow. He took a step forward that shook the ground, and as his foot landed, snow flew everywhere. Surprisingly, there was a patch of green under his feet, and in a bizarre manner, grass had sprouted all over the ground. You're all too rude. I've respected you so much, and you're treating me like this? You're going too far. Second senior brother's face was filled with anger, and his smile was no longer on his face. As he moved forward, he lifted his right hand and swung it at the people who had rushed forward to stop the people from the ninth summit. As he waved his hand, a patch of green appeared in the vast expanse of white snow. It spread from the three northern borderline tribesmen who were approaching second senior brother from their hair to their shoulders and had ferocious expressions. Almost at that instant, a patch of green suddenly appeared out of nowhere under the three Northern Frontier tribe members' feet, and with a strange speed, it covered the three people's bodies. When they arrived before Second Senior Brother, their bodies were already covered in green grass. Their faces were ashen, and they were still in the position of struggling, unmoving. Second Senior Brother, it's not that they're rude, it's that we're wearing masks. Damn it, no matter who sees us, no matter how polite you are, they'll still know what we're trying to do. Why the hell would they need to be polite to you? Hu Zi swung his axe, not too far away, but he did not forget to turn his head around and shout at Second Senior Brother. Second Senior Brother was momentarily stunned. He instinctively touched the mask on his face, then shook his head and sighed with a myriad of emotions. He's lucky he didn't succeed in framing Gong Sun Hu. Su Ming's expression was calm, but the murderous aura in his right eye shone brightly. He took a step forward, but he did not have the shocking presence of Second Senior Brother. Neither did he have the domineering pressure of Hu Zi. However, he held a green sword in his hand, and there was lightning swimming at the tip of the sword. Su Ming simply allowed the three people charging towards him to close in on him. The instant they crossed paths with each other, Su Ming's speed increased abruptly, and he instantly overlapped with them. Once he moved past them, blood immediately gushed out from their necks, and their heads fell to the ground. Su Ming calmly held his sword and walked forward. Su Ming and the other two were within Northern Frontier Tribe's gate, right under the two gigantic statues of malicious phantoms. Behind them was a vast snowy plain, and the cold wind moaned in the air. Before them was Northern Frontier Tribe, whose borders could not be seen with a single glance. War drums thundered from the depths of Northern Frontier Tribe. Those war drums were low, and there was an oppressive air to them. As they reverberated in the air, it was clear that they were telling the entire tribe that a powerful enemy was coming to attack them. People charged out from the tribe and charged towards them. There were quite a number of normal Northern Frontier Tribe members around Su Ming and the other two. They were different from the normal people Su Ming had seen before. There was not much fear on their faces. In fact, very few of them left in a panic. At most, they would retreat a little and leave a sufficient distance between them. They would stand there and look at Su Ming and the other two coldly. There were many people charging out from the tribe. At first glance, there were dozens of them. As they closed in on them, they split into three groups and charged towards Su Ming, Hu Zi, and Second Senior Brother. Hu Zi grinned and took a big gulp of wine. With one move, he took the lead and placed his axe by his side. He spread his arms wide and let out a loud roar towards the sky. Enter dreams. His roar shook the sky and earth, causing the Northern Frontier Tribe members who had split into three groups to be momentarily stunned, but they were only stunned for an instant. Snores reverberated in the air, and just like when he helped Su Ming fight against Sima Accent, Hu Zi fell to the ground and fell into a deep sleep. There was a strange look on Su Ming's face. Second Senior Brother sighed by the side and went forward to kick Hu Zi. Once he did so, Hu Zi immediately opened his eyes and picked up the axe by his side. An awkward look appeared on his face. Third, don't always enter your dreams. Second Senior Brother shook his head and walked toward the dozens of Northern Frontier people. He lifted his hands, and immediately a layer of green appeared on his hands. He pressed them against the ground. The snow on the ground melted rapidly and green grass appeared. As it grew in a strange manner, it caused the area to turn into a grassy field. The instant the Northern Frontier Tribe members who were charging towards Second Senior Brother closed in, the grass on the ground snapped at the roots and charged towards them like arrows. Hu Zi was enraged by what had happened just now. He swung his axe and fought against the dozen people who were charging towards him. This was the first time Su Ming saw Hu Zi's bravery. This person did not care about pain or getting injured. He relied solely on his ferocious nature to charge into the crowd like a fierce tiger and slaughter his way through the crowd. What caught Su Ming's attention was that every single time Hu Zi was attacked, a flash of light would appear on his body, as if nothing had happened. It was as if there was an invisible layer of armor on his body, causing all the injuries that landed on him to feel as if they did not even tickle him. Uzi threw his head back and laughed loudly. As he continued fighting, his eyes turned bloodshot. In the end, he looked as if he was about to spread his arms wide and pretend to enter his dreams. Second senior brother let out a fake cough by the side, and only then did he interrupt Uzi's actions. Su Ming walked forward one step at a time. The incoming Northern Frontier tribe members had varying levels of cultivation, but almost the instant they closed in on him, lightning shot out with Su Ming as the center and spread out in all directions. That lightning came too suddenly, and all the people who were covered by it froze for a moment. Almost the moment they froze, Su Ming charged forward. Green light swept through the area, and a dozen-something heads flew into the air along with blood. Zhuge, come out. Once he killed these dozen people, Su Ming lifted his head and let out a low roar towards the deeper parts of Northern Frontier tribe. Before the lingering echoes of his roar faded away, cracking sounds came from Hu Zi's body. A loud bang shook the sky, and a transparent layer of glass shattered on Hu Zi's body. The countless invisible shards swept through the area with him as the center, causing the people around him to scream in pain and fall back with their bodies riddled with holes. Damn you, this is your grandpa Hu's newest creation, invincible armor. Uzi lifted his head and let out a prideful roar. Zhuge, come out. It was also at that moment that second senior brother calmly flicked off the snow on his robes. Before him were a dozen corpses pierced through by grass. He lifted his head and looked towards the deeper parts of Northern Frontier tribe with a smile on his face, then shouted out the same two words. Zhuge, come out. The voices of the three senior brothers fused together at that moment and turned into a wave of sound that surged into the sky and rumbled in all directions. The normal Northern Frontier tribe members around them could no longer remain calm. Their expressions changed drastically. Bone Sacrifice Realm. That person who killed with grass is a powerful berserker in the Bone Sacrifice Realm. What did that man with the axe have on him that allowed him to withstand so many attacks? He even seemed to have exploded in the end, but the ones who were injured were our tribe members. There's also that person with green light and lightning swimming around him. His level of cultivation isn't high, but he's incredibly fast. But by the looks of it, he should be the weakest. There were a large number of ice houses in the middle section of Northern Frontier tribe, about 100,000 feet away from Su Ming and the others. The faint sounds of battle came from the tribe's gate, but by the time they reached this place, they had already become much weaker. There were countless Northern Frontier tribe members here, and all of them had aloof expressions on their faces, as if they were not paying any attention to the battle before them. Among the many buildings in the middle section of the Northern Frontier tribe, there was a bonfire outside a house that was clearly much taller than the others. 3 people sat beside the bonfire. They were 3 middle-aged men with long hair that reached their waists. Their long hair was braided and didn't look messy. They sat there with calm expressions on their faces. Beside them, there was a servant roasting a small beast in the fire and smearing some food on it from time to time. I bet that they won't make it, one of the 3 said calmly. That doesn't count. Of course they won't be able to make it. We were talking about time just now. I bet that in an hour, these 3 people's heads will be hung on the gate. Another person said with a smile. All right then, I'll bet 2 hours. I think the person who's good with grass is pretty good. He should be able to live for a little longer. If that's the case, I'll bet the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Don't forget, the previous section might be the place where our tribe lives, and there aren't any warriors from Phantom Days tribe, but the person who led the patrol team there today is Yulin. His level of cultivation is about the same as ours. I even heard that there's a black thread in his arrow aura, and his phantom is about to go through its second metamorphosis. As the 3 of them spoke, it was as if they were completely unbothered by what was happening at the front of the tribe. Instead, they were using it as entertainment and betting. However, just as the 3 of them were talking, a gloomy voice suddenly came from the house behind them that was clearly different from the other houses in the middle section of the Northern Frontier tribe. I bet that all 3 of them will make it here alive so that I can personally drink their blood and tear off their hair. I'll give them to my good-for-nothing younger brother. Guh. The appearance of that voice caused the bonfire around the three of them to dim down, as if they did not dare to burn it wantonly. The three of them also immediately got up and knelt down toward the ice house. Their faces were filled with sincerity and zealotry. If the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe was already like that, then it was even more so for the people at the back of the snow plains. Those who could stay here were usually of much higher status. At that moment, besides the echoes of war drums, there was only silence at the back of Northern Frontier Tribe. Not a single sound of battle could be heard. There were hundreds of houses here, and there was a faint presence that was not weak coming from each of them. I can't stay calm anymore. I really can't stay calm anymore. My fellow Taoists, my monthly votes have fallen out of the top 10. I've always thought that the quality of the votes in June was very good, but the dismal state of the monthly votes tells me that quality is the boss. But could it be that quantity is the boss? I didn't explode, so I didn't hope for a high ranking either, but the top 10 is my bottom line. Now that my bottom line is gone, please give me your monthly votes and let us return to the top 10. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 292. At the end of the hundreds of houses was the end of the snow plains. At the end of it was a cliff that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall. The cliff was dyed white by the snow, and at the edge of the cliff was an ice house. Beside the house was a white tree with black leaves. There was a human face with its eyes closed on the tree's trunk, and the cracks on the tree's trunk formed a human face with its eyes closed. At the bottom of the cliff was the other part of Northern Frontier Tribe that was beyond the barrier. If anyone stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down, they would be able to see that the other part of Northern Frontier Tribe was a city. In truth, even Baisu did not know that most of the people living at the front of Northern Frontier Tribe were from Northern Frontier Tribe, but they were not from Phantom Deish Tribe. The people living there were other tribes that had been forced to submit to the great tribe of Freezing Sky's rise to power. They were gathered together with Phantom Deus, and that was how Northern Frontier Tribe was formed. In truth, there were several tribes with bloodlines in Northern Frontier Tribe. Among them, Phantom Deus was the strongest, which was why Phantom Deus Tribe was in control. All the elders who had been conferred titles in the past were also from Phantom Deus. Over the years, even though the inheritance of bloodlines had become indistinct under Phantom Deus Tribe's dominance, those who were not from Phantom Deus Tribe could only live at the front of the tribe. This was related to Phantom Deus customs. They believed that the former were secondary and the latter were the masters. At that moment, at the front of Northern Frontier Tribe was a middle-aged man with hair that reached his waist and a ghastly expression on his face. He wore beast skins and held a bow made of bone in his hands. There was a blue aura surrounding the bow, and a black thread could be seen faintly within it. Behind him stood nearly 100 Northern Frontier Tribe members quietly, but they did not have bows in their hands, because these people were not from Phantom Deus Tribe. However, they also obeyed the man with the bow. In Northern Frontier Tribe, being able to wield a bow was something that was incredibly respected. The middle-aged man's gaze was like lightning as he looked at Su Ming and the other 2 tens of thousands of feet away, where they were fighting against another batch of dozens of Northern Frontier berserkers. A scornful and disdainful look appeared on his lips. If the great tribe of Freezing Sky had not used despicable methods in the past, Freezing Sky Clan would have changed its name to Phantom Deus Clan, the man said in a ghastly voice. The blue aura surrounding the bow in his hands seemed to be replying to his words. Sir Yulin, they're looking for Zhua Ge. A man from the northern borderline tribe beside the middle-aged man said in a low voice. Are you saying that they are looking for the people from Phantom Deus Tribe? That's why your tribe members do not need to fight back? The middle-aged man turned his head around and looked at the man who spoke coldly. This man's status was clearly not ordinary. However, under Yulin's gaze, especially the bow in Yulin's hand, the blue aura on it turned into a ghostly figure. It opened its mouth and seemed to let out a soundless roar. Beads of sweat appeared on the man's forehead, and he lowered his head. "I dare not. If you don't dare, then shut up." Yulin's gaze turned even colder. "But, sir." The man clenched his teeth and suddenly raised his head to look at Yulin. "With your cultivation base and your ghost, if you were to act now, you would be able to save many of my clansmen. I'm not the only one who wants to do this. The other races have the same idea." The man's heart was thumping. If he hadn't seen so many of his clansmen die, he wouldn't have opened his mouth. Yulin stared at the man. After a long time, his lips curled into a cold smile. He lifted his right hand and patted the man's shoulder. "Well said. It's time for this farce to end." Yulin pointed at Su Ming and the others tens of thousands of feet away with his right hand. "All warriors in the front line of Northern Frontier Tribe, go and take the heads of these 3 people. If you don't go, then you will be punished as traitors of a tribe." "Sir." The man froze and frowned. "Do it or die." Yulin narrowed his eyes, and killing intent appeared in them. The man fell silent, then gritted his teeth and let out a low growl. He leaped up and charged tens of thousands of feet away. The near 100 Northern Frontier Tribe members behind him rushed out as well in silence. When they charged forward, they looked as if they had turned into a tidal wave that surged into the sky in the tribe and charged towards Su Ming and the others. At the same time, low growls echoed in the front line of Northern Frontier Tribe. More berserkers from the tribe turned into shadows and charged towards Su Ming and the other 2. When almost all the berserkers in the front line of Northern Frontier Tribe rushed out, Yulin licked his lips and looked at the scene. "Kill them. It wasn't easy for me to get this chance. This time, perhaps my ghost will have enough flesh and blood to go through the second metamorphosis." Su Ming, Hu Zi, and his second senior brother charged through the gate of Northern Frontier Tribe like 3 long arcs. Wherever they went, all those who tried to block their path would die. Behind them, the ground was covered in grass. Besides blood, there were also dozens of corpses on the grass. Hu Zi's eyes were bloodshot. He drank and swung his axe. There seemed to be an unknown amount of invisible armor on his body. As he charged at the front line, he did not care about the injuries that fell on his body as he roared. Second senior brother was gentler and did not do anything as bloody. However, he did not even need to attack himself. Usually, when someone charged towards him, they would turn into a vegetable and die before they could even get close to him. As for Su Ming, the murderous aura in his right eye was incredibly thick. There was a layer of lightning swimming around his body, and all those who came into contact with it would freeze for a moment before their heads would fly into the air. The small virescent sword in Su Ming's hand continued dripping with blood. Even if Su Ming had his eyes closed, he could still sense everything that was happening around him with his divine sense. In fact, as he moved forward, he could even observe Hu Zi and his second senior brother. His calm demeanor was at ease. "Second senior brother, the people here aren't from Phantom Deist tribe." Su Ming spoke slowly as he moved forward. "If the people from Phantom Deist tribe won't appear, then we'll just have to kill until they do." Second senior brother smiled faintly and moved forward. Almost at the moment Su Ming, his senior brothers, and his junior brothers continued their slaughter and arrived at the front line of Northern Frontier Tribe, roars suddenly traveled into the air, and more than 100 berserkers charged towards them from the front. There were 7 people in the lead, and all of them possessed power that was not any weaker than Ziche's. As they closed in, they looked as if they could cover the sky and earth under the illumination of the dark sky. Several tens of thousands of feet behind these people, Su Ming's divine sense immediately noticed a person looking at them. There was a cruel smile on his lips, and he held a huge bow in his hands. His hair was so long that it reached his waist. The instant the 100-something people charged towards them, a glint appeared in second senior brother's eyes. He was just about to walk forward when Su Ming lifted his foot and Han Mountain Bell appeared indistinctly in his body. During that instant, many things happened. The 100-something berserkers charged towards them in a frenzy. Yulin's eyes were filled with anticipation and desire as he stood in the distance. The blue mist on the bow in his hands swayed viciously and turned into the phantom shadow. There was greed and bloodlust in the phantom shadow's eyes. The 7 people in the lead of the 100-something berserkers had unwillingness on their faces, but they had no choice but to attack. A wisp of black mist charged towards them from the ground behind Su Ming. Behind that black mist was a thin old man walking towards them with his hands behind his back. All of this froze in an instant because of one thing. Hu Zi was right at the front. The moment the 100-something berserkers closed in on him, he let go of the axe in his hand, and it fell on the snow with a bang. The wine gourd in his left hand was no longer filled with wine, but he still brought it to his lips, as if he had taken a big gulp before letting go. The wine gourd fell to the ground. As it did so, Hu Zi opened his arms and looked at the sky. "Enter, dream," he mumbled until his voice turned into a shocking roar. His roar reverberated in the air and covered an area of 10,000 feet in front of Northern Frontier Tribe. As his voice reverberated in the air, the wine gourd fell on the ground with a loud bang. That voice seemed to have happened coincidentally. Hu Zi closed his eyes, and the moment he did so, an indescribable pressure swept through the area with his body as the center. A thick stench of wine filled the air, and snoring sounds could also be heard. Wherever the sound and the stench of wine passed by, Su Ming widened his eyes and sucked in a sharp breath. The 100-something berserkers who had charged forward suddenly stopped. With dazed looks on their faces, they closed their eyes and fell to the ground. In an instant, the area of 10,000 feet in front of Northern Frontier Tribe turned into a sleeping ground. Besides Su Ming and his second senior brother, all the other living beings closed their eyes and fell asleep. "Enter, dream," Su Ming mumbled. He looked at Hu Zi. At that moment, Hu Zi was standing on the ground with his eyes closed, as if he was in deep sleep. Third did it. Second senior brother was momentarily stunned before ecstasy appeared on his face, and he started laughing loudly. Yet the moment second senior brother started laughing, a piercing whistle that shook the sky came from tens of thousands of feet away, bringing with it an indescribable killing intent. It was an arrow. One of them was surrounded by a blue aura, and as the blue aura floated in the air, it turned into a ferocious, malicious ghost. That malicious ghost wrapped itself around the arrow, and with an indescribable speed, it charged towards Hu Zi. Wherever that arrow went, a crack would appear in the ground. In fact, all the buildings and Northern Frontier Tribe members that stood in its way crumbled with a bang. The buildings were destroyed, and the flesh and blood of the living beings disappeared, turning into skeletons. All of it was absorbed by the arrow, and like a bolt of lightning, it turned into a loud bang in the sky. Yulin's hand was still lifted several tens of thousands of feet away. The bowstring he had let go of was still trembling and letting out a buzzing sound. His face was ferocious and filled with anger. At that moment, everything before Su Ming's eyes became a blur. The only thing that remained was Hu Zi, who had his eyes closed, and the whistling arrow. He did not communicate with his second senior brother, but the two of them seemed to know what the other was thinking, and they did two different things at the same time. Su Ming took a step forward, and as if he had pierced through the air, he charged towards Hu Zi. Second senior brother also took a step forward, but his direction was not towards Hu Zi, but towards Yulin, whose bow was still buzzing in the distance. There's still one more chapter until midnight. If you vote for the final 6 hours, then the sky will be clear. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 293. I didn't explode in June. I wrote less than 200,000 words. It's not that I didn't want to explode, but that I couldn't. I had to push the plot forward and lay the groundwork for Sky, Miss Shaman Hunt. I needed to spend a lot of time thinking about all of this. The outline is just the backbone of the story. The flesh and blood of the plot must be full, so I didn't dare to explode. I was afraid that I'd write too crudely. I've been writing Demon Seeking with all my heart. I wanted to write a plot that was different from the renegade immortal and a different soul. I was afraid that I'd write Su Ming's name as Wang Lin when I wrote The Explode. I'm not saying this because I want you to understand me. I'm just saying what's on my mind. I've always thought that the fewer words a work has, the less it should be able to explode. If it hurts the mind, it'll be difficult to cure. Instead, the more words a work has, the more it can explode for a long time without hurting the mind, due to its foundation. In truth, I came to this conclusion based on my reverse thinking when it comes to the matters between men and women. I think it makes a lot of sense. What do you think? Finally, 6 hours have passed. Will there still be monthly votes? To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 294. At that moment, Su Ming's speed reached an unbelievable level. Yulin still believed that even if his arrow was not the fastest in the tribe, it was still much faster than a berserker's. If he wanted to kill someone, he would have to be able to dodge the arrow. Due to the process of drawing the bow and releasing the arrow, there was a certain possibility that he could avoid the arrow. However, if he did not have the ability to dodge the arrow, then he was confident that no one would be able to save him, since the arrow had already been released. When he saw Su Ming's actions, besides this thought, the only thing that appeared in Yulin's mind was mockery and disdain. But the moment his ridicule appeared, it immediately froze and was replaced by a look of disbelief and shock. The moment Su Ming took a step forward, two people appeared in Yulin's eyes. One of them was still in the distance, but the other had strangely appeared before Hu Zi, who still had his eyes closed. The instant he appeared, his arrow closed in on him with a loud whistle. He saw with his own eyes that the young man, with a murderous aura in his right eye and a calm and apathetic look in his left eye, lifted his right hand, and as if he was drawing, he drew a line in the direction of the approaching arrow and the ferocious phantom shadow formed by the blue mist on the arrow. In Yulin's eyes, it was as if the entire world had disappeared at that moment. The only thing left was the trajectory of that finger and the arc it left behind. It was as if that trajectory had opened the door for the sky and earth to fuse together, causing the sky and earth to fuse together at that moment, causing the weather to change, causing that moment to turn into an eternally inextinguishable beauty. Su Ming's finger sliced through the incoming arrow, and without a single sound, the arrow was cut in half. The instant it was cut in half, it started shattering inch by inch and turned into dust. The moment that finger fell, a sorrowful feeling filled the area and grew in the hearts of all those who saw that finger. Confusion and emptiness appeared in Yulin's eyes. His body trembled, and blood flowed out of his eyes. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, and his mind rumbled. Under this feeling of sorrow, this sorrow that grew in his heart seemed to have exceeded what his body could endure. It was as if he was being suppressed by the world, rejected by the world. At the instant he did so, the indistinct voice that Su Ming had heard when he was in the land of the shamans appeared once again. This time, it did not appear in his heart. Instead, it was echoing in the world around him with an ancient voice. I was born in the fashion of an action. After I was born, the berserkers had already declined. The heavens are heartless, causing chaos and separation. The heartless earth has caused our dark mountain to die. War rises and the moon shatters. The road to Nanchi's home is filled with sorrow. Su Ming lifted his head. His afterimage in the distance had already disappeared, and the moment he lifted his head, he sliced through the arrow with his finger and sliced through the blue phantom's body. The phantom let out a shrill scream of pain, as if it was filled with despair before death. It seemed to have noticed something unbelievable and struggled to retreat. In fact, as it retreated, a pleading look appeared on the phantom's face, along with terror and extreme terror. However, at the instant Su Ming's fingers swept past them, all these expressions disappeared along with his body, and his body disappeared into thin air. The phantom died. Almost the instant Su Ming sliced through the area with his finger and destroyed the phantom, a person walked out of the ice house where the three people were kneeling in the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe. That person was short and looked like a child, but his face was rough and rough. Perhaps it was due to his height, but his hair was so long that it dragged on the ground. God, a berserker's transformation. A grave expression appeared on that person's face. "Bring me my bow," the short person said languidly. At the same time, in the quiet rear section of Northern Frontier Tribe, waves of aura suddenly moved with a bang from the ice houses. It was as if they were attracted by Su Ming's finger, and it was as if a huge wave had been stirred up on a calm surface of water. On the battlefield, Yulin's face was pale. His body staggered, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. His hand that was holding the bow trembled violently, and his eyes were bloodshot. However, the appearance of these bloodshot veins did not motivate him to be angry. They only turned into boundless fear and shock. Almost the instant he staggered backwards, he saw Su Ming lifting his head to look at him from the distance. There was mercilessness in that gaze, along with a bone-chilling chill. This was the last gaze he saw in his life, the last scene he saw. A green shadow walked out from behind him, and an ice-cold hand gently swept across his neck, taking away a bloody head. Second senior brother had a gentle expression on his face. He held Yulin's head and looked at Su Ming with a smile and praise on his face. "Let him sleep for a while. He won't be hurt here." As second senior brother spoke, he shifted his gaze away from Hu Zi and turned around to look further into the distance in Northern Frontier. "Youngest junior brother, have you come up with a name for that stroke?" "Not yet," Su Ming answered softly. "Let's call it Berserker Obliteration." Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he nodded. "I look forward to the day when you can create the entire Berserker Obliteration and play it with the sun." As second senior brother and Su Ming spoke, the two of them turned into two long arcs and charged into the depths of Northern Frontier Tribe. Wherever they went, no one dared to stop them. Even the scattered berserkers retreated, causing Su Ming and second senior brother to become even faster as they charged forward. After a moment, they arrived at the border between the front section and the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe. Over there, they saw that the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe, which was also Phantom Deus Tribe, was 10,000 feet away. They also saw three middle-aged men looking at them coldly from outside the ice house in the tribe. They lifted the bows in their hands, and blue mist surrounded them. Ghostly howls echoed in the air. There was also a short person standing behind the three people, and he was holding a bow that was almost half his size. That person had stabbed that bow into the ground. He held the bowstring and was drawing it slowly. Thick black mist seeped out from the bow, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a ferocious, malicious phantom in midair, roaring at Su Ming. That wasn't the end. Within the middle section of the Northern Frontier Tribe, dozens of figures suddenly appeared. Each of them had hair of different lengths, and each of them held an open bow in their hands. A sharp, murderous intent suddenly condensed between the heavens and the earth. "Second senior brother, I still have a second style after Berserker Obliteration. Help me give it a name as well." As Su Ming spoke, he took a step forward. The moment he took that step, he appeared 500 feet away. His speed was so quick that it was indescribable. The moment he appeared 500 feet away, one of the 8 ice hoops on his legs exploded with a bang. His speed increased exponentially in an instant. The explosion of the ice hoops made second senior brother's face tremble. "Youngest junior brother, he's been carrying this thing." The explosion of the first ice ring made Su Ming feel as if his entire body had lost a great deal of weight in an instant. The moment he suddenly felt lighter, he rushed forward 1,000 feet in the same amount of time he had previously taken to cover the distance of 500 feet. To others, they could no longer see Su Ming's figure in that distance of 1,000 feet. They could only see a fragmented wisp of air instantly closing in on him. At that moment, most of the Phantom Deus tribe members in the middle section of the tribe had only drawn their bows a little wider. Under this astonishing speed, the pupils of the short Zhuji's brother shrank. The three people before him also had expressions of shock on their faces. This speed, before he could finish his sentence, banging sounds came from Su Ming's body once again. Almost the instant he traveled 1,000 feet, the 2 ice hoops on his legs exploded once again. At that moment, there were only 5 ice hoops on his body. His speed became even faster, and in the span of a breath, he traveled several thousands of feet and charged towards the short person with the bow. "Shoot him!" The short person widened his eyes and let out a low growl. As he roared, sharp arrows charged towards Su Ming with a loud whistle. The moment the arrows left the bowstring and flew out at an incredible speed, banging sounds came from Su Ming's legs once again, and another 3 ice hoops exploded at the same time. At that moment, there were only 2 ice hoops on his body, but even so, his speed had already reached a terrifying level. Su Ming only needed an instant to travel 5,000 feet, and it was as if he had pierced through time and space, as if he had turned those 5,000 feet into an inch. At that moment, the world before Su Ming's eyes slowed down. The arrows flying towards him were also slower than when a normal tribe member drew their bows. They pierced through his body, but what they pierced was only his afterimage. Not only did the arrows slow down, even the 3 middle-aged men before him who were letting go of their bowstrings also slowed down. In fact, Su Ming was already standing before the 3 of them, but the 3 of them looked as if they did not see Su Ming. It was as if he was invisible, and the 3 of them were still looking into the distance, until Su Ming lifted his right hand and pushed forward with his palm. When his palm pressed down, it was as if he had struck air, but the skin of the 3 people before him sunk. Their hair floated up slowly, and their bodies started trembling. Su Ming did not stop. He hurled a punch at the air. With that one punch, the 3 people coughed out blood and let go of their bowstrings, causing the 3 arrows to change direction and lose their accuracy. Finally, Su Ming lifted his right hand, turned his fist into a finger, and pointed at the air. With that one finger, the heads of the 3 middle-aged men who had been betting just now exploded. Only when they died did Su Ming's reflection appear in their eyes, and that was the end of their lives. Uncle Master buys palm, punch, and finger, so he can also do it at extreme speeds. Su Ming gained an epiphany, but the moment the 3 people died, as if the world's trajectory had returned to normal, a black arrow appeared before Su Ming's eyes. Once the 3 people's flesh and blood flew into the air, the arrow shot through the air. It was an incomparably pitch-black arrow, and a ferocious ghost could be seen howling on it. Behind the arrow was the short man's killing intent, as well as the shock and astonishment hidden beneath that killing intent. In the midst of his astonishment, the short man felt a gentle breeze blowing towards him from the frigid sky. On the 4th chapter will explode. I beg for a guaranteed monthly ticket for July. The silence of the 6 months will rise in July. Please cast your guaranteed monthly vote. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 295. The first chapter of the 7th month has been updated. The wind of freezing sky has just begun to rise. This chapter's name is Wind Rises, Freezing Sky. Where does the wind come from? The wind rises. The wind has already risen. It will not weaken, and it will not dissipate. Instead, it will gather together until the wind blows in all directions, and freezing sky will rise. On this day, the wind rose. July was the month in which the wind swept through the 9 heavens. July was the month in which the wind howled through freezing sky. July was also the month in which he walked into the land of the shamans. Over there, the gentle breeze that came from Dark Mountain and gathered together in freezing sky would be tempered into a windstorm. It would be tempered by life and death, and it would gather together into a violent storm in the land of the shamans. The wind has risen. The demon general has appeared. July, I beg for a guaranteed monthly vote. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for me and give me a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 296. Where did the wind come from? The wind came from this place. Su Ming's expression was calm, except for the murderous aura in his right eye. The instant the black arrow and the ferocious phantom shadow charged towards him, the final 2 ice hoops on Su Ming's body exploded. 6 of the 8 ice hoops shattered along the way. With each one that shattered, Su Ming's speed would surpass his previous speed, and his speed would increase once again in an inconceivable fashion. At that moment, the instant the final two ice hoops shattered, everything in the world before Su Ming's eyes, be it the black arrow, the black phantom shadow on the arrow, or all the Phantom Deist tribe members who appeared around the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe, seemed to have frozen before Su Ming's eyes. The black arrow seemed to have frozen in midair as if it did not move. It was as if the only thing that moved in the entire world was Su Ming's body. He walked forward, past the black arrow, past the ferocious phantom shadow, and arrived before Zhuji's brother, the short man. This was a powerful berserker who was equivalent to those in the spine realm. He might not have reached the later stage of the spine realm, but based on the thickness of the black fog on the arrow he shot, Su Ming could tell that this person's level of cultivation should be at the peak of the initial stage of the bone sacrifice realm. He could take that step at any moment and reach the middle stage of the bone sacrifice realm. This person was not the strongest person Su Ming had ever defeated. Su Ming walked past this person, and the virescent sword in his right hand flashed, slicing through the short man's neck. When Su Ming's sword sliced through the air and he stood behind the short man, it was as if the world had returned to its original state, changing abruptly from its frozen state. A shrill scream of pain traveled forth from behind Su Ming, followed by the sound of corpses falling to the ground, along with the sound of the arrow whistling through the air. The shrill wails of the Phantom Deist tribe members who had died along with their host. There were also many other sounds in the air. They were the sounds of the Phantom Deist tribe members in the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe, drawing their bows and shooting arrows. At that moment, the arrows in midair fell to the ground as they whistled through the air. Su Ming's speed was so quick that he killed 3 people, then another, and the entire process only took the speed of an arrow. He took a step forward when the arrow was in the air, and when he stopped, the arrow landed. Su Ming's face was slightly pale, but his expression remained calm. Only a murderous glint appeared in his right eye, and he looked at the Phantom Deist tribe members around him who were standing on top of the ice houses, their faces filled with shock and extreme terror. When the Phantom Deist tribe members looked at Su Ming, their gazes were filled with disbelief and shock. In their eyes, they had not even seen how Su Ming had killed those 4 people. They only saw Su Ming take a step forward 10,000 feet away, and when his foot landed, he stood there. The 3 people behind him exploded into a bloody mess. Their arrows were broken, and their ghosts were destroyed. Soon after, Zhuji's brother, the Black Arrow Berserker, had his head sent flying into the air, and he let out a shrill scream before he died. Su Ming's speed surpassed everyone's imagination, causing them to be unable to believe what they had just seen. Only their hearts pounded faster against their chests, which turned into nervousness and fear, causing the area to fall silent at that moment. Second senior brother, who was 10,000 feet away, also widened his eyes at that moment. After a long while, he sucked in a deep breath. When he looked at Su Ming, his gaze was filled with praise and shock. He had seen all of Su Ming's actions, but even so, when he killed the short man, there was a moment when Su Ming's figure disappeared from his eyes. This meant that during that instant, Su Ming's speed had surpassed second senior brother's senses. If Su Ming's speed could be any faster and he could disappear from the eyes of powerful warriors for a long period of time, then he would be a powerful warrior. He would be a gust of wind, a wind that could only be felt by others blowing against their faces, but could not be seen. When Su Ming's gaze swept past all the Phantom Deist tribe members in the middle section of Northern Frontier Tribe, all those who his gaze fell on would instantly turn pale and a bang would go off in their heads. It was as if there were numerous sharp swords contained within Su Ming's gaze that could pierce through their eyes and rush into their souls, leaving behind a deep brand. That brand gave them a feeling that they could not fight against him, a feeling that they could not win against the person before them. Under that feeling, under Su Ming's gaze, and as their hearts raced against their chests, all those who Su Ming swept his gaze past instinctively knelt down and worshipped him. They placed the bows in their hands by the side, crossed their arms over their chests, and lowered their heads. When Su Ming swept his gaze past all the people in the area, no matter how long their hair was, whether they were warriors or normal tribe members, all of them knelt down and worshipped him. The second style is like the moment of beauty that can destroy all phantoms. It's matchless. Let's call it Phantom Flash. What do you think? Second senior brother asked gently and walked towards Su Ming. Phantom Flash? All right. Su Ming nodded. His face turned even paler. That speed just now was already his limit, and when the two ice hoops exploded in the end, it had also surpassed what his body could withstand. If it was not because he had been refining his physical body for the past few months, then his body might have already crumbled under that shocking speed. But youngest junior brother, this style might be shocking, but it's still not enough. Second senior brother walked over slowly. Once he arrived beside Su Ming, he cast a glance at the short person's corpse on the ground, whose head had been separated from his body. Perhaps what you said about this shortcoming isn't correct. After all, you're the one who created this. I think that you lost your observation skills under that kind of speed. As second senior brother spoke, a glint appeared in his eyes, and immediately, a large amount of grass grew out of thin air around the short person's corpse. Still preparing to recover, at the instant second senior brother's voice fell, the head of the short man's corpse looked as if it had suddenly melted and turned into countless black bugs that spread out on the ground. At the same time, even his corpse did the same, turning into countless black bugs in an instant. As they spread out on the ground, these black bugs let out piercing screeches and flew into the sky. Yet the moment they flew up, the grass on the ground flew up as well and became entangled with the black insects. They continued moving, trying to break free from the entanglement of the grass, but it was clear that they could not succeed. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the black insects in the sky, and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. My creation isn't like thirds, where you enter a dream. It's also very different from your picture realm. My creation is to search for the path of death in life, just like how the day is searching for the darkness of night. As second senior brother spoke, he lowered his head and looked at his left hand. He lifted it slowly and seized the air in the direction of the black insects that were struggling to break free from the grass in the sky. With that one grab, the endless amount of grass in the sky immediately turned brown, as if it had lost its life force. It was like flowers in spring running into the autumn wind, and they rapidly withered away. Yet the instant they withered away, the withering air spread out and covered the black insects as well. When second senior brother lowered his left hand, the black insects fell from the sky, and once they crashed on the ground, they turned into a pile of flesh and blood. When all the insects fell to the ground, what appeared on the ground were not insect carcasses, but the torn-up corpse of the short person that was formed from the insect carcass. Next time when you cast Phantom Flash, don't place your attention on your surroundings. Focus on the enemy you want to kill and observe his life force, whether he's still there, whether he's hidden. If you're not confident, then remember this. Always act as if he's still alive. Kill him once, twice, or even more times. As second senior brother spoke, he walked towards the pile of flesh and blood and lifted his foot. With each step, he stomped on the scattered pieces of flesh and blood. His expression had been gentle from start to finish, forming a stark contrast with his current actions. Second senior brother lifted his head with a smile and spoke softly to Su Ming. Now, he's indeed dead. He's completely dead. His actions caused an endless chill to rise in the hearts of the Phantom Deist tribe members around them. In fact, to them, the man who was still smiling was even more terrifying than Su Ming. This terror did not lie in his power, but in his actions. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he nodded his head deeply. Let's go. Let's see just how many people will stop us in the latter half of Northern Frontier Tribe. Second senior brother smiled faintly and patted Su Ming's shoulder. There was still praise in his eyes. Su Ming was just about to follow, but the moment he lifted his foot, a shudder ran through his body, and he lifted his head to look at his second senior brother standing beside him. He saw that his second senior brother's smiling face had turned slightly pale. Second senior brother. Su Ming opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. All right, I'm your senior brother. It's what I should do. Let's go. Second senior brother shook his head and smiled, then walked in front. Su Ming stared at his second senior brother blankly, and warmth appeared in his eyes. The instant his second senior brother patted his shoulder just now, he could clearly feel a warm current fusing into his body through his second senior brother's hand. Once it swam through his body once, it turned into an abundance of life force. That life force was like an incredibly powerful medicinal pill that allowed Su Ming to mostly recover from the injuries he had sustained due to his unbelievable speed. However, it was clear that it was not easy for his second senior brother to do this. The love he had for his master was carved into Su Ming's heart. He would never ever forget the 9th summit. As the two of them moved forward, no one stopped them anymore. The Phantom Deist tribe members around them watched Su Ming and his second senior brother gradually walking into the distance. Gradually, they arrived at the middle half of Northern Frontier Tribe's territory on the snow plains. What appeared before Su Ming and second senior brother was the silent igloo located at the furthest part of the tribe, along with the big tree with black leaves and the house under the tree at the edge of the snow plains that they could see in the distance. Phantom Deist tribe lives up to its name. Youngest junior brother, there are nearly 100 people in the ice houses in this area. Among them, there are about a dozen of them who are equivalent to those in the bone sacrifice realm. Second senior brother swept his gaze past the ice houses and smiled at Su Ming before lifting his head to look at the sky. Youngest junior brother, it's dark. The instant second senior brother said those words, his tone was different from his usual gentleness, and it was as if the sky had been turned upside down. The 4th chapter was over. This was the 2nd chapter. I need the monthly votes urgently. I don't want to die in July anymore. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 297. The sky turned dark. As soon as these words came out of second senior brother's mouth, a cold and gloomy aura suddenly emerged from his body. That cold aura was as dark as the sky, as cold and merciless as the night. At this moment, it was as if second senior brother had completely changed into another person. He might still be standing beside Su Ming, but Su Ming could clearly feel that his second senior brother had become different at that moment. However, Su Ming was not unfamiliar with this second senior brother. He had seen him before. Second senior brother's feet slowly floated into the air until he was several inches above the ground. His long hair floated in the air, and his expression was cold and incredibly stern. At that moment, as the sky turned dark and night arrived, he turned into the darkness of the night he was searching for during the day. Su Ming saw his second senior brother floating forward like a ghost. Wherever he went, the ground under his feet would turn black. That black color was not due to snow, but due to the black grass growing on the snow. The grass at night is black. Did you know? Second senior brother's voice echoed in the air, and as his words traveled out, rustling sounds came from the black grass behind him. In that silence, those sounds sounded like mumbling, as if someone was talking about something. Right at the instant second senior brother closed in on the ice house right in front of them, a piercing whistle shot through the air, and a black arrow shot out from the ice house, charging straight towards second senior brother. A ferocious phantom manifested on the arrow, and it let out low growls, as if it wanted to tear apart second senior brother and devour his flesh and blood. I can't find the darkness of the night, because I am night. Second senior brother's voice was cold and aloof. As he spoke, he did not dodge the arrow and simply allowed it to pierce into his body. But it was as if second senior brother's body had turned into an illusion. Once the arrow passed through, it landed on the black grass on the ground and let out a buzzing sound. However, second senior brother did not stop for even a single moment. He continued moving forward, and what made Su Ming's pupils shrink was the phantom shadow that was formed by the black mist on the arrow. As if it had fused with second senior brother, It gathered on his body and let out shrill screams. That roar shook the sky, as if the phantom shadow was facing an injury that brought extreme pain to it. However, when Su Ming looked over, he could only see the phantom shadow gradually shrinking as it surrounded his second senior brother, as if it was about to disappear at any moment. Great ghost-devouring art! Why do you know the secret art of my phantom deish tribe? A voice filled with shock rang out from the ice house where the arrow had been shot. At the same time, a figure stepped out from within. This was a large man wearing a long white robe. His eyes were bright, but at this moment, they were filled with astonishment and shock. The moment the man walked out, piercing whistles traveled into the air, and more than a dozen sharp arrows shot out from the ice houses at the back of Northern Frontier Tribe. The vast majority of these arrows were blue in color, but there were also a few that were black. There was even one arrow that was covered in extremely dense black aura. The ghostly shadow it formed was over 100 feet tall in the black sky. This scene made it seem as if all the phantoms had charged out together. With the arrows as their bodies, they roared and charged towards second senior brother. Su Ming's expression changed. Without any hesitation, he took a step forward. Green light shone by his side, and the small virescent sword charged towards the sky with a whistle. Yet at that moment, second senior brother's footsteps came to a halt. He spread his arms wide and lifted his right hand to seize the air. Su Ming was in disbelief when he seized the air. A gigantic bow appeared in second senior brother's hand. That bow was entirely black. It was made from black wood. The bowstring was made from black grass, and the bow was completely black. Second senior brother held it in his hand and drew the bow. Not only do I know how to devour phantoms, I also know your phantom bow. As second senior brother's aloof words reverberated in the air, he drew his bow. There was no arrow in it, but as he released the bowstring, Su Ming sucked in a sharp breath. He saw with his own eyes that second senior brother's body turned into a wisp of black smoke the instant the bowstring was released, and like an arrow that had just left the bow, he charged towards the incoming arrows in the sky. It was difficult to describe this scene. To Su Ming, it was as if second senior brother no longer had a physical body. He had turned into an arrow, and this arrow was shot by him after he drew the bow. All of this happened in an instant. Su Ming saw with his own eyes that second senior brother had turned into a black arrow, and within that arrow light, there was a wisp of green hair. At that instant, Su Ming suddenly understood second senior brother's creation at a deeper level. He wandered back and forth between life and death, just like how he searched for the darkness of night during the day. This was not a search during the day, but a search during the night. Since he was in the dark, that was why even if he found it, he would never be able to find it. Su Ming looked at the arrow that was his second senior brother, the thick black mist on it, and the indistinct phantom shadow that had gathered together. It was especially so when he saw that the phantom shadow looked exactly like his second senior brother. Su Ming's heart trembled, and he understood now. Why second senior brother's creation was life and death. Why second senior brother loved flowers, and why second senior brother loved having the sun shine on the side of his face. And why second senior brother was always searching during the night. Phantom shadow? He turned into a phantom shadow. Who is he? This is impossible. There's no host, only a phantom shadow. This, could it be that he's the host? Disbelief appeared on the faces of the phantom deish tribe members, and some of them even looked towards Su Ming. At that moment, the arrow and phantom shadow that was second senior brother crashed into the dozens of phantom deish tribe members' arrows in the sky. A shocking boom reverberated through the sky and earth, spreading madly in all directions in the dark. All the arrows that were shooting towards second senior brother crumbled at the same time and turned into an endless amount of shards that tumbled backwards. The numerous malicious phantoms on the arrow and the 1,000 feet tall phantom surrounded by black mist let out shrill and terrified wails. Second senior brother's body was like a void that could absorb all matter. He sucked in all the malicious phantoms and had them surround his body, causing second senior brother to look indistinct as he stared down coldly from midair. There seemed to be a horn appearing faintly on second senior brother's head. The color of that horn was black with a hint of green. The malicious phantoms on his body rapidly shrank as they wailed, as if they were all devoured by second senior brother in the dark. Phantom King. He's the Phantom King. This is impossible. This is impossible. He doesn't have a host. How? How could he possibly survive? Uproars reverberated in the air, and the Phantom Deus tribe members instinctively retreated. As they looked at second senior brother in the sky, their gazes were filled with terror and disbelief. Uncontrollably, illusory figures appeared behind them. Those illusory figures were none other than their respective ghosts. When the ghosts appeared, they looked at second senior brother in the sky, and their expressions were filled with terror. However, the difference was that within that terror, there was also a hint of fervent respect. Su Ming stared at his second senior brother's back, and a complicated look appeared on his face. He knew that Hu Zi had chosen to enter the dream multiple times in this place, because this was a rare chance. With his master protecting him in the dark, he could enter the dream without worry. It was just like how he entered the dream when he was by Su Ming's side, because he knew that he had been by his side at that time. Even if Su Ming had not been in the Ninth Summit for a long time, he could still tell that Hu Zi had truly treated him as his junior brother. He was a junior brother who could be protected, and he could also be protected. It was just like the current second senior brother. Let's keep up the excitement in our ears this month. No matter what our ranking is, please let us charge up once more. Monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.